My parents have chased away every boyfriend I have ever had. How can I prevent this from ruining my relationship with my current boyfriend? Original, February 13, 2025. I was very shy during high school and didn't leave my house unless I had to, so as a result I didn't get a boyfriend until my freshman year of college. After 7 months of dating my first ever boyfriend, I brought him to my parents' house for dinner, just so they could meet him. I had to step away for roughly 10 minutes to help my older sister with her baby, and when I came back, my BF, then 20 male, and my dad, old, were having a full-blown fistfight. We managed to stop them and my BF stormed off without saying anything, while my dad insisted my BF was incredibly rude and disrespectful to him and my mother and that a guy like that was no good for me, because he'd just end up doing the same thing to me. I was shocked that my BF could do such a thing because he had always been extremely sweet and I've never met or heard of anyone not liking him, but when I called him and told him what my dad had said about what happened, all he did was laugh and say I can believe whatever I want, before blocking me on everything. I was deeply disturbed by this, but my mom and sister insisted that he had just shown his true colors, and said my dad saved me from an abuser. I reluctantly accepted this, but something about it felt really off. I met my second boyfriend several months later, during my sophomore year. Part of me still felt my parents were part of the problem with my last BF, so I managed to get him to wait an entire year before introducing him to my parents. From the moment she laid eyes on him, every word my mom spoke to him was dripping with fake friendliness and subtle jabs implying she did not approve of him, which made him visibly uncomfortable. While we were eating dinner, she began asking me why I decided to date my BF, and asked about other guys and why they didn't work out. Some of the guys she asked about were completely made up. At this point it was clear what they were trying to do, and I silently vowed to talk to my boyfriend and tell him how my parents were trying to sabotage me. Unfortunately, it didn't get that far, as my dad chipped in and demanded to know how a boy, who couldn't support himself financially, was ever going to support his daughter. Mind you, we were both juniors in college at this point, and both of us were working part-time jobs. So this question was really insane. He responded by saying he'd already decided he wanted nothing to do with this family and was planning to break up with me when he got home, but he's just going to leave now. Within minutes, he was gone and I was blocked. Again. My parents insisted they did nothing wrong and just wanted to test his confidence as any parents would, but I pointed out that this was the second boyfriend they chased away, and they didn't do anything to scare off my older sister's husband. I went low contact with them after that, but fast forwarding a little bit, I eventually allowed them to gaslight me into introducing them to my third boyfriend, whom I had met towards the end of my senior year, and basically the same thing happened. I had made it through college unable to find a long-term BF, purely because of my parents. I did meet my current boyfriend, 28 male, 2 years ago, and I have managed to avoid introducing him to my family thus far. If he ever brought it up, I would always have a ready-made excuse prepared to explain why it wasn't possible, which has been pretty easy because he usually only asks about them when planning for major holidays. I have fallen madly in love with him and hope to start a family with him one day, but he recently told me that he can't even allow me to move in with him until he's had a chance to meet my family. I do not know what to do, as I know my parents will make it their mission to break us up if they meet him, but based on his insistence on meeting them, I realize I can't put this off any longer. Usually, relationships end because of something one person in the relationship says or does, and it's incredibly unfair that I always end up single because of things I cannot control. I want to tell my BF about my parents and insist that meeting them is a bad idea, but I've listened in on some of his conversations with his friends, and the general consensus among them seems to be that a girl with a super dysfunctional family is a massive red flag, and an indicator of what their married life would be like. So I come here asking, how do I approach the problem that is my parents without risking losing the longest relationship I've ever had? If my parents end up being the cause of yet another breakup, I just don't know what I'll do. I just don't know. Edit. Wow, I made this post about an hour before going to bed, but woke up to quite a few comments here. Thank you so much to everyone who has helped me realize what I need to do. I've read through all of the comments and saw some recurring questions come up that I wanted to address. I am not fully in contact with my parents primarily because they helped me a lot financially during college and when I first graduated and was looking for a job. When I went low contact with them, they constantly yelled at me for being ungrateful and said family does not turn on each other over minor disagreements involving boys. It sounds ridiculous when I type it here, but after months of this treatment, when I found myself faced with the decision to either tell them I forgive them so they'll pay for my dorm room, or refuse to forgive them and have to move back home, I ended up caving. Why didn't I stand up for my past BFs when I saw them being verbally abused? I don't know. I've never been allowed to talk back to my parents, So the thought of calling them out while we have company over is not something I realized I could do, I guess. My arguments with them after they ran off BF2 and 3 were the only times I've ever come into full conflict with them in my entire life. I will be going to my boyfriend's house today after work, and will tell him everything. I am terrified he will still want to meet them, just thinking about it has me shaking at my desk. But you all are right. He has a right to know and make his own decision. Edit 2. I told him and even showed him this post. To make a long story short, he still would like to meet them but thanked me for telling him, as he always figured something was seriously wrong. My parents host dinners for our family every Sunday, and we will be attending this one. I suppose I'll make a new post with an update afterwards. Top comments. Comment 1. You stop bringing anyone you like around them. Period. Tell your boyfriend why. They get weird and run anyone you date off with their nonsense and you'd rather just avoid them altogether. My boyfriend knows all about my dysfunctional family and abusive upbringing. It didn't run him off. If anything, it brought us closer as he empathized. ETA. We just celebrated 6 years together. The right partner won't hold your family against you. You couldn't choose them, after all. Comment 2. If your plan is to stay with him in the long run, you have 2 options. 1. Come clean about why you don't want them to meet and explain exactly why you're scared of them meeting, or 2. Cut off your parents entirely and tell your boyfriend you cut them off. Ideally, either way you end up telling him why you chose what you chose. Good relationships take communication, and if your boyfriend doesn't know why he's being kept away from your family, that most likely will be the reason you break up. Update, February 18, 2025, 5 days from original update. I meant to make this update a lot sooner, but since my last post a lot has happened. I truly appreciate all the comments I received calling me out for hiding my parents being insane from my BF and encouraging me to be honest with him. My boyfriend is pretty involved now, so I guess I should give him a fake name. I will call him Ethan. I sat Ethan down and told him about my parents and how they ran off my previous boyfriends, before showing him my original post as many recommended. Fortunately, he did not seem to care that I hadn't told him, but he did agree with many commenters that my parents were more than just insane. They were outright abusive. Although he understood how I felt, he still said he would like to meet them, both to see it for himself, but also because he felt there was an underlying reason for their behavior. My parents have dinner for the family every Sunday, which I have been attending on the weeks that I'm not hanging out with Ethan that day, so we agreed that he would come to the next one. When Sunday came and we arrived at my parents' house, my anxiety was through the roof. Ethan had agreed to leave with me the moment things started to get out of hand, but with my parents that could have easily been as soon as we walked through the front door. My parents were surprisingly very nice, though. My dad actually seemed excited to see Ethan, and my mom fawned over her daughter bringing home such a handsome, confident-looking man. I couldn't understand what was happening. Ethan even shot me a look a couple times, as if to silently ask if he was missing something, because my parents were actually lovely. I want to provide a play-by-play of the entire night, but the post would just be too long. The point is, my parents had done a complete 180 from their previous behavior, and it made me look and feel crazy for trying to warn Ethan about them ahead of time. During dinner, my mom said she was so happy to see her daughter had finally found someone who wasn't judgmental and was willing to give me a chance because of the person I am today, because the past doesn't matter. My heart dropped. What was she talking about? Ethan said he does not know about anything in my past that may be cause of concern, and my parents exchanged a concerned look, as if it was rehearsed. My dad asked him why he thinks my previous relationships failed, and he said that he was under the impression they got scared away after meeting my parents. My mother looked at me with disappointment on her face and said, "Oh P, is that really what you told him?" I was at a loss for words, but Ethan was not. He said that it's pretty clear they are trying to plant seeds of doubt in him about our relationship, but he is not interested, as he knows me well enough to know my character and that even if there was something serious in my past, parents who loved and supported me or even just wanted grandchildren would keep it a secret to avoid ruining my relationship. My dad said he already has 2 grandchildren, and motioned towards my sister, who did not have her kids with her that evening. Ethan said my dad must have been very supportive of my sister for her to be able to start a family while he tries to run off any guy I bring home, and my dad's response was very casual, but extremely shocking. He said, "Of course, she's actually mine." Everyone was quiet for a few moments, until Ethan spoke up and said that now all of the abuse they've only put me through is starting to make sense. My mom said he's spouting nonsense, and that I have not been abused in any way. She then looked at me and admitted her marriage had a rocky start, but both her and my father have moved past that. I was too busy replaying my entire life in my head to say anything. The previous boyfriends, The lack of support for my social outings growing up, the volleyball games I had to have a friend drive me to because my parents were always too busy, the rage I was always at risk of facing if I ever spoke my mind. All while my sister got the opposite. I started to cry, the hardest I ever have. Ethan immediately announced that we were leaving. My dad demanded we stay where we are so we can clear things up, but Ethan ignored him as he pulled me out of my chair and led me away. My mom screamed at me not to leave, and that this guy was trying to isolate me from my family. I yelled back that if anyone had been trying to isolate me, it was her, for my whole life. As we drove back to Ethan's place, my mom sent me several text messages cussing me out, saying one mistake doesn't change the fact that my dad loved, supported, and raised me, and that he would always be my real father. Ethan said he's not my dad, he's an abusive, controlling asshole who was taking his insecurities out on me. I ended up blocking both of my parents' numbers because they were saying some truly awful things to me, both about myself and Ethan. Ethan said he was expecting them to be crazy, but this was far worse than he could have anticipated. He said I need to go into therapy immediately, and that he will pay for anything my insurance doesn't cover. My parents showed up at my apartment twice yesterday to demand I come out and speak to them, but I've been staying at Ethan's all weekend and will likely be here all week. I'm not sure if this is the update y'all wanted. I had countless people enraged at me for being spineless and not standing up to my parents, and while I had planned on doing so, that's not what happened. I don't know what is going to happen with my parents, or where I go from here. But now that the holiday is over, I can spend some time looking for a good therapist. Top comments. So your mom cheated on your dad and you are the affair baby and they treated you poorly because of that? Is that the story, or has my reading comprehension failed me? Maybe you have a great father out there somewhere. 23andMe? Ethan sounds great. The truth shall set you free. My stepdaughter's prank went too far, causing a major conflict in our family. Now, my marriage and relationship with her may never be the same. I know the title sounds bad, but please read and throw away plus fake names. I, 38 million, married Judd, 44 feet, a few years ago, and I acquired a stepdaughter, Abby, 14 feet, as a result. I dated Judd when Abby was 8, met her when she was 9, and married Judd when she was 10. I'd say our relationship is okay. She doesn't act bratty towards me and respects me enough as her mom's husband. However, there is one glaring issue about her, and that is her pranking nature. Abby loves to pull pranks. Some examples are her hiding my car keys with what looked like 100 dubs in a box. I found them quickly because she failed to notice my keys have duct tape on them. Another one is when she hid in the fridge, something I still find very weird, to scare the first person who opened it. Well, last Wednesday, I arrived home and it seemed that I was the only one there. Only my shoes were at the doorstep, and I even called out Judd's and Abby's names with no answer. This is somewhat normal as Judd sometimes works late and Abby stays at school for extracurriculars. So I screwed around with my dog, a German Shepherd and Husky mix for anyone that will ask, for a bit, and then I decided to relieve myself. When I got to the bathroom, I noticed that the window cabinet was open. I thought nothing of it at first and unzipped my pants, but then I saw a shadow behind the shower curtains. I thought the worst and immediately punched the figure behind the curtains. Well, as everyone may have guessed from the title, it was Abby. She was making a prank video and I had not noticed that she propped her phone up on the bathroom cabinet with 2 cups. I'm not gonna lie, I did not hold back. I punched her as hard as I could. Her nose looked broken, and when I realized it, I flipped out, and so did she. After maybe 5 minutes of freaking out, I drove her to urgent care and informed Judd of the situation. Her nose was indeed broken and would need about 6 to 12 weeks of recovery. Abby won't talk to me, and as for Judd, she thinks that my action may have been justified, but also thinks I should have approached with more caution, which she has refused to elaborate on. So AITA? Comments. Comment 1. NTA. Get a copy of the video. If Abby starts bitching to people about how her stepdad broke her nose, you are looking at jail time. Get and keep a copy of the evidence that she startled you while you were peeing. You need to sit Judd and Abby down and have a serious conversation. Filming without consent while someone is in the bathroom is a massive invasion of privacy and illegal in many places. If she did this to another kid, it could be considered child PRN. While you are in the bathroom, you feel vulnerable with having your pants down, genitals out. Those feelings increase the fight-flight part of the brain, and that you react on instinct. Please tell Abby that you love her, and never meant to hurt her. Comment 2. And why would a young girl think pranking her stepfather in the bathroom is ever a good idea? She should at least be talked to about pranking anyone in the bathroom, especially with a video? Comment 3. This is so unfortunate. People get killed for this. She's lucky she's alive. That's the normal reaction. To fight. As messed up this is stuck firmly because this is a life lesson. Play stupid games and win stupid prizes. Fortunately it's all on tape, right? So you're protected. What she did is actually what's unforgivable. Her dumb antics are gonna get someone killed or put in jail. Her mother needs to address this. Not one more prank. Ever. Comment 4. How stupid does a 14-year-old have to be to not know that recording someone in the bathroom without their consent is a very bad idea? And what was the stupid prank? Boo, I scared you, so I'm gonna put your reaction and PP on social media. Hey. NTA, but you might want to get legal advice lawyer before a false and more sinister version gets circulated. Comment 5. As a teacher, I can say that 14-year-olds are indeed very uninformed. Had a 14-year-old once who took 30 minutes to go to the bathroom. When he finally came back, because he was a kid who didn't usually cause trouble, and I was worried, I privately asked, "What the heck took so long?" His response? "I was waiting for people to leave the bathroom." I still didn't get it, so he elaborated. If you use a stall, you're probably trying to shit or do something that you need privacy for, and other people will see your feet under the stall and try to film you by putting their phones over the walls of the stall. I started requiring that students trade their phones for the hall pass after that. Also told the administration, but they didn't do anything. Point is, yes, teenagers are that uninformed that behavior like this doesn't click as being problematic. Update. 12 days later. Well, this blew up big time. Let's address a few things. Abby's pranking nature isn't just situated on me, she has pulled pranks on her friends, the neighbors, and at school. The school has called Judd several times about this as they have resulted in mild vandalism. The refrigerator prank. She was 11 when that happened, not a grown teenager. It was a brand new and very large fridge that my uncle bought and showed it off to everyone. So she climbed in until he opened it again. Judd yelled at her saying that she could have suffocated in there and took her outside to scold her for a few hours. The video itself. The video doesn't show the toilet at all, just the shower curtain. However, the issue still remains that this was a massive invasion of privacy. The video has been deleted and Abby has admitted it was purely her fault. The update. It's been a chaotic week. Judd still refused to elaborate on how the situation should have been handled. I showed the post as a result and she did a 180 turn. She suddenly thought it may be time to stage an intervention and I agreed. We brought some of her friends as well as my cousin's wife Jess. Jess is an officer from another state and Abby seems to respect her. In this intervention we state how we were each affected by her various pranks and how in turn they affected her. Jess also spoke about how much of these pranks border on criminal territory, meaning she could be arrested or face retaliation. It seemed to have gotten to her and Abby cried a bit and promised to do better. When everybody else left, Jess stayed behind and brought to our attention about a disciplinary camp that we could send her to. The program is 6 weeks long and involves group therapy, individual therapy and constructive projects, whatever that means, and is held at a university campus. The program apparently has good reviews. Judd seems dead set in sending her to figure out her core problems. I'm a little hesitant about sending a kid away from home, but I'm the step-parent so I got no say. Edit, update. Okay, I swear Judd must be following my posts because now she's taking back what she said and is now thinking about doing what I and you fellow Redditors suggested in the first place, weekly therapy. So we agreed that I'm gonna find a therapist and I'm gonna front the bill for it since she didn't take this seriously in the first place. Comments. Comment 1. The program apparently has good reviews. Try to get more than just reviews. The troubled teen industry is pretty horrifying. There's a troubled teen subreddit for survivors. It's brutal. Oop. I'm aware, that's why I'm hesitant about this. Comment 2. Oh, thank God, I'm glad you're aware of the troubled teen industry. My heart sank so low when I read that your friend was suggesting it. Maybe it's legit, but I do feel it's a bit of an extreme response. Abby seems like a mostly good kid who just has this one stupid thing that's got stuck in her brain, normal teen stuff. I find it interesting that Judd did a 180 after reading a post, and now seems to be going from one extreme to the other, no real punishment to all punishment. I would think a bit more about that. I realize you're a step-parent and likely have no say in how Abby is parented, but I find it very concerning that your wife seems to be so easily influenced by outsiders. Honestly, if Abby's able to keep to her word to, if not end her pranks entirely, at least tone it down, I'd say you're all in the clear. Maybe suggest to Judd that you keep this program in reserve in case she needs it, and that she has a chance to prove she's learned her lesson first. Comment 3. Sent away seems extreme. Have you looked into this program? Is it held at a religious college? She might just end up abused at some of these types of teen rehabilitation camps and also just exposed to kids that are worse. I realize it might not be your call, but I would suggest try local therapy first way before sending a kid off. Oh. And I agree. Sending a kid away from home will probably just damage them more. But Judd seems intent on dishing out the harshest punishment immediately, thinking that this will nip it at the bud. Or she doesn't want to be seen as an enabler. She changed opinions real fast when I showed her the original post. New update, 7 months later. Well, it's been 7-ish months and there have been a few developments. Let's address some more things before getting there. Up until recently I have been still getting DMs asking why is this brat still in my house, why am I friends with Jess, and why did I name my wife Judd in my posts. I was drinking when I made my first post. I saved a draft and went back to it after a few hours of sobering up, fixing a bunch of grammatical mistakes but clearing some got overlooked and it just stuck. I was planning on calling her Judy. Jess and I are not friends. She is married to my cousin who I do have a good relationship with, as well as their 2 daughters and Jess's daughter. Jess has a serious problem with boundaries. As for why Abba was still living with me, you have to understand, I, her stepfather, broke Abby's, my stepdaughter's, nose. If word got out it would look really bad, I would be seen as an abuser and may have even been arrested. Several comments have pointed out how I should have saved that video for my own safety. I was pretty much going insane at that point and my wife thought nothing of it, thinking I should have just let this go until I showed her my original post. To be honest, I wanted to keep the intervention that we had smaller that didn't involve her friends because I felt they did not need to know about it. I just wanted her grandparents and Jess to show up, but I was convinced otherwise. Update. We decided that we would send Abby to weekly therapy. We were under the agreement that I would find and pay for it, and if it worked my wife would pay me back. It did work. Abby improved by a lot. She has realized how much damage she has done and is working to improve things. She has even begun to do volunteer work as well, which I didn't think she would do. She has apologized profusely, realizing how disgusting her prank was. She has also deleted her TikTok account, claiming that's where she got all the ideas from. We decided we would get her a new smartphone for her birthday 3 months ago for the improvement she's shown. We took away all smart devices as punishment. I don't think I mentioned that before. As for me and my wife, I gave her an ultimatum. Since therapy worked for Abby, it would be time we go to couples therapy or else we separate. We were having problems before this whole incident showed up and now it kinda has to be forced. Past 2 years we've been living more like roommates and her enabling behavior is finally causing things to fall apart. She reluctantly agreed. It ended up being short-lived. She spoke during our sessions how I take things out of proportion and I went too far posting the incident online. She revealed that she was indeed following my posts and that's why she changed her mind about the camp. Our therapist then asked us both if we loved each other at all. I was honest and said yes, but it's becoming difficult. My wife on the other hand said she was in love with the idea of me. I needed a minute if I heard that right, and she went on how I was apparently a catch. I was younger than her, had a stable job and owned a house, and she thought my loyalty was a bonus. I don't why, but I asked her if she cheated on me and she said no. But it doesn't matter, she just revealed that she settled for me. I filed for divorce 2 months ago. We had a prenup, so things are going smoothly other than her erroneously claiming some jewelry is hers, but my lawyer seems to think that it should be finalized within 1 to 2 months. So my Sibex has moved out along with Abby. My dog misses them, she just sits by the door waiting for hours for them to come back. Stibex is not happy about how things have progressed. She has been calling me a spineless bastard who couldn't just tolerate how things are and has been saying to everyone who will listen. But behind closed doors she's been blaming Abby for her divorce, claiming it was her behavior that caused it. I know this because she has called me and texted me semi-regularly. Abby is living with her grandparents because apparently her mother can't deal with her right now. I actually liked my in-laws. They were real good people and they apologized for their daughter's actions and even offered to reimburse me for Abby therapy sessions. They told me that they were going to take care of Abby because it seems her mother has finally lost it. I spoke with Abby and assured her that this wasn't her fault. Chances are we were going to divorce regardless. She then told me that she didn't want me to leave and that I was the closest thing to father she ever had. This surprised me. I never really saw myself as a parental figure for Abby. I only really did the minimal. Outside of that I just paid for school events, supplies, and would carve out some time for her, but I did leave it up to her if she wanted to spend time with me. I told her that maybe when she turns 18 we can pick up where we left off, but until then I don't think we can see each other. Her mother would definitely try to keep her away from me, and to be honest I need some time away from Abby as well. Things are so quiet at home that it's relaxing. So there you go, I don't even care if my Cbex finds this post. TLDR. Sent Abby to therapy, it worked, but now me and her mother are divorcing and things are just falling apart. Comments. Comment 1. I figured this was where this was headed. Good for you, you deserve better OP, and congrats on being smart enough to get a prenup. OP. You know, when I brought up the prenup she was hesitant and took about 4 months to get her to sign it. Guess that alone should have screamed problems. Comment 2. So your ex-wife didn't get the idea that if she loved you and invested in being more than a roommate, you two would still be married? Like, what's the deal here? To your ex, not you. Advice. Get your dog another dog to be busy. He will forget them at some point. Might also search for a dog daycare somewhere so he can meet other pet friends. OP. Honesty. I think she is just incapable of forming a relationship beyond a superficial one at this point. As for my dog, I did hire a dog walker for her during the day after they moved out. Guess I'll look into doggy daycare too. My broke best friend refused a job at my restaurant, saying being a server is low and not respectable. Original post. This happened just before. My friend is broke, he hasn't worked in over a year, he's running out of savings and has even had to ask his parents to support him. I asked him many times why he doesn't try to get a job that's not in his field. He's got a computer science degree but has never worked in the field a single day in his life since graduating. He's turned down lots of jobs for reasons. They don't pay him enough, they won't give him a higher up position right off the bat, etc. I'm well aware he's deluded in that sense, but he has many other good qualities and that's why I love the guy. So since graduating the only job he's done is share marketing, something like online investing, in Forex. He said he made about $20 a day and that it was enough for him. He's single, lives in a shared house and doesn't spend much. Whatever makes him happy, right? The thing is he's totally broke. I don't think he really is making even $20 a day on the shares because he's run out of money. He's stressed out and won't stop complaining about money problems. This is confusing for me and I think it comes down to his pride not allowing him to get a job that's not fit for his ego. Now, I work as a server in a very nice restaurant and have offered him a job as a server many times. I have a great relationship with my boss and after telling him my friend's situation he didn't hesitate to say he wanted to help and would like to offer him a full-time job. My friend has been turning it down for months without really giving much of an explanation. Today he called me saying his parents have cut him off and asked to borrow money from me. I said that as a personal rule I do not lend money to anyone, but that he was welcome to start working tomorrow with me. He again turned down the offer and I got a bit frustrated because I'm offering him a solution to his money problem but he won't accept it. So we got into a bit of a banter and he finally confessed he thinks being a server is low and doesn't get you people's respect. I told him respect is earned by getting off your ass and doing whatever you have to make ends meet. I asked him if he thinks I'm low and he backpedaled saying he didn't mean I in particular was low, but the job itself was. He then straight out told me nobody can respect me working as a waiter in my 30s. Wow. TBH. I'm pretty upset, he thinks I am low for working as a server? I got a degree too but I couldn't find a job in my field so I had to take the first job I could. I'm not some prissy prick thinking I'm too good to serve others. I take pride in being a waiter and doing a great job. I'm so hurt by his comments. Why is he my friend if he thinks I'm low? I didn't want to say something nasty or get into an argument with him so I only told him he was being very offensive and I felt like he needed time to think about what he said to me. He replied saying there was nothing to think about, then gave me a list of low jobs like street sweeper, cleaner etc. and said it's a fact those are low, not respected jobs. I asked him to apologize before this snowballed into a full-blown argument and he said he stood by what he said. I don't want to overreact but I don't know if we can keep being friends after this. I really don't know what to do. I don't want to badmouth him but he should examine his life and learn empathy. I'm a very easygoing and forgiving person but what he said hurt me and was idiotic. The man who refuses to work is calling me low. I don't know what to do. TL.dr friend is broke. I offered him a job in a restaurant but he turned it down saying it is low and not a well-respected job. Top comments. Comment 1. Honestly, be happy he didn't take the job. Because with that attitude he wouldn't have lasted long and tarnished your rep with it. I don't want to overreact but I don't know if we can keep being friends after this. Honestly, don't keep him as a friend. Doesn't seem that you get much out of the friendship anyway. Comment 2. Funny. Pompous ass is too good to work as a waiter but isn't above asking to borrow money from a waiter because he's too pathetic to go earn a living to take care of himself. It's easy. Take the job off the table because it's not appreciated or respected by him and it will only end bad for you and your generous boss. Don't lend your friend anything and let him figure out his problems on his own. Simple life lesson coming. Update. AskReddit November 24, 2018, next day. I made this post yesterday asking for advice on how to handle the situation with my friend. Basically he's very broke and his parents have cut him off. I've been offering him a job in the restaurant I work in for months and he always turned it down. His situation got so bad he came to me yesterday asking to borrow money. I don't lend money to anyone as a rule, but I told him there'll always be a plate of food for him in my house and he was welcome to accept the job offer and start working with me the very next day. Well, long story short, we had a bit of an argument, if you can call it that, and he finally confessed he thinks being a server is low and won't earn him people's respect. In an interesting turn of events, he called me today and said he'd thought it through and had decided he's willing to accept the job only with one condition, as if he was the one doing me the favor, that he's to be made manager right off the bat and that he should move in with me so that I can drive him to work because the bus from his house to my workplace takes 35 minutes and that's over an hour of commuting a day. He then suggested I move my youngest daughter into my elder daughter's room so that there's an empty bedroom for him in my house. So he obviously had given this some thought. I was dumbfounded. The sense of entitlement and the level of pride you gotta have to make those demands is astonishing. I know he's never had a proper job, but he's not stupid. He has to know you can't be made manager if you don't even know the names of their dishes or how to serve a coffee. It's all about his pride. He's got an ego bigger than I thought. He can't be humble enough to accept a waiter job and work things out from there. He needs to be made manager so that it won't hurt his pride as much. I was so out of words I said I don't want to talk and hung up. I can't explain how off-putting that conversation was. I feel repelled by him. I feel disgusted, as if something has changed inside me. I can't have a person like him in my life. What makes a person refuse all help just out of sheer pride? My wife says I've been patient and kind enough to him throughout the years and I should let him figure things out on his own. He really is broke. Before his parents cut him off, they were covering his rent bills and he survived on the $20 a day he claimed to be making investing in Forex. I know he barely eats and can't even afford a new pair of shoes, and some other stuff. I know he's got no money, but then why won't he accept the job? He's not shy, has no mental health issues, and has no problem dealing with people. He's refused many other jobs in the past. Even jobs related to his degree, computer science. He's got the wrong idea that he should be given higher up positions right from the start because he's him, and that's what he deserves. That's the reason he hasn't worked a single day since graduating like a decade ago. Anyway, I've gone to do some deep thinking and reevaluate this friendship because I don't like the person he's becoming. His dad is a bus driver and his mother a retired teacher. They are lovely, humble, down-to-earth people. I think they've done the right thing cutting him off. I know they're both struggling financially, so it's not fair for their son to leech off them. His mother even had to go back to work doing some tutoring in order to make some extra money to be able to support my friend. I'd be so ashamed if I made my 70-year-old mother go back to work just so I could be sitting at home dreaming of landing the perfect job while actively dying to get one. Anyway, I'm rambling. Sorry, I'm just so mad. My wife says it's time to cut the cord and distance ourselves from him. I think she might be right. Edit. A yellow star has appeared next to my name. Does this mean I'm the sheriff now? My family tried to force an arranged marriage for business. I eloped. Now they're furious because I just sent them my wedding photo. I'm Zara, and I've been dating Logan for nearly 2 years. We met at our friend Andre's monthly game night, one of those informal get-togethers when everyone brings dollar store munchies and spends hours playing board games. My parents are traditional, not the wealthy sort of traditional with vacation houses and country club memberships, but the kind where dad works extra hours at his job and mom saves every penny at the grocery store. They've always had a family comes first attitude, which usually means whatever dad says goes. Logan and I have been keeping our relationship quiet around my family, not exactly hiding it, but not making a big issue either. He attends occasional family gatherings, delivers flowers to my mother, which she angrily places in the kitchen rather than the living room, and does his best to talk sports with my father, who usually simply grunts in response. Yesterday, I attended our customary Sunday supper. Everything appeared normal. Mom was preparing her famous pot roast, which she extended for the entire week. Dad was watching TV, and my sister Vera was texting on the couch. Then I observed that there were extra places arranged at the table. Who else is coming? I inquired while assisting Mom with the salad. Oh, Warren and Dexter are joining us, she replied. Warren is Dad's best friend from high school, and they work together. I scarcely know his son Dexter, other than he is 27 and also works with them. Dinner began normally enough. Warren arrived with Dexter, who was dressed in a button-up shirt still creased from the store. My mother kept offering him the nicest cuts of meat while giving me strange, meaningful glances. Vera kept kicking me beneath the table while enlarging her eyes, as if she knew something I didn't. Then, between the pot roast and Mom's box mix brownies, my father cleared his throat. Zara, Warren and I have been talking. I immediately felt a strange sensation in my gut, like if something horrible was about to happen. Dexter here is ready to settle down, Warren announced, beaming like he'd won the lotto. And we thought, what better match than our two families coming together? I almost choked on my water. What? It makes sense, my father said, not looking at me. Warren and I are expanding the business, and Dexter will eventually take over his father's role. You two would make a good match. I sat there, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, as Dexter stared at his plate, looking about as relaxed as I was. The brownie in my mouth turned into sawdust. I'm dating Logan, I admitted, confirming what everyone at the table already knew. My mother waved her hand dismissively. Oh honey, that's just a young girl's fancy. We're talking about your future here. Your mother's right, Dad added. Logan's a nice enough kid, but he's not going anywhere. Dexter here has a real future in the business. I looked at Dexter, who was still fixated on his brownie. He hadn't spoken anything in the entire time. Warren was smirking as if he had just solved global hunger, and my parents were staring at me expectantly. This is insane, I stated. I'm not marrying Dexter. I love Logan. My father's face got somewhat purple. This isn't about love, Zara. This is about family and the future. As I walk towards the door, I hear my father say, you have until the end of the month to end things with that boy. We're announcing the engagement at Warren's birthday party. I didn't say anything else. I simply grabbed my crossbody bag and left. Logan was already waiting in his car, just around the bend. We had planned to go to Walmart after supper to get some items for his apartment. I climbed inside the car, my hand shaking as I attempted to buckle my seatbelt. That was yesterday. Today, my phone has been flooded with texts from my mother about being rational and thinking about the family. Vera sent me a series of WTF texts, followed by cautions that Dad is serious about this. Even my cousin, Ophelia, called to see whether it was true. Logan and I remained up late last night in his tiny studio apartment, discussing what to do. We had actually planned to move in together when his lease expires next month. Nothing extravagant, just a little two-bedroom in the same building as his friend Andre. We've been saving money and keeping it quiet. Now I'm wondering if we should speed up those plans. I've silenced most of my family on my phone, but I can see the message count increasing. The only person I've responded to is Vera, who has promised not to tell anyone that I'm staying at Logan's tonight. I'm not sure what to do next. I adore my family, but this is insane, right? For example, the year is 2024, not 1825. Who even performs planned marriages anymore, especially for something as mundane as a business deal? I need advice. Logan is supportive, but says it's up to me. I just know one thing for certain, I will not marry Dexter, no matter what my father believes marriage will bring me. First update. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for the amazing response to my previous post. It's been 2 weeks since that bizarre Sunday dinner, and I'm writing this at 1 a.m., on Logan's couch, stress-eating dollar store cookies and trying to figure out how everything went so swiftly. Our water heater recently broke, and the landlord isn't responding to texts, so now seems like a good opportunity to update you all while I wait for the kettle to heat water for a sink shower. The day after my last post, I waited until my folks were at work before going home to fetch some necessities. I assumed I'd be in and out, but Vera was home ill from her community college studies. Between stuffing clothes into my duffel bag, she told me what I'd missed. It turns out that the entire thing is far trickier than I had anticipated. The truth emerged in parts. Warren's business is struggling, badly. Dad has also been anxious about money, as seen by the dripping kitchen faucet. This arranged marriage was more than simply some random traditional values thing. It was about merging enterprises. They want to leverage my father's contracts to protect Warren's company from falling under. Isn't it really romantic? Things became much more problematic when I realized that my parents had already paid a non-refundable deposit for a wedding location. They had scheduled it under the premise of Warren's birthday party, but it was clearly signed as an engagement celebration. My mother has been exhibiting the contract to everyone as proof that I cannot back out now. The location is a fancy converted barn that likely costs more than I earn in 3 months. Over the next 3 days, I received a continual stream of missed calls and emotional messages. My cousin Ophelia stopped by Logan's with some winter clothes she had borrowed and mentioned that my mother has been contacting everyone in the family, weeping about how I'm wasting my life. The family gossip mill is running overtime. Apparently, Dexter still lives in his parents' basement and spends the most of his time playing Fortnite. What a deal I'm missing out on. Work hasn't gone any better. My manager suddenly reduced my hours after my mother called the store, weeping about her troublesome daughter. I'm now rushing to get shift swaps just to cover my rent. Logan is coping with his own troubles. His car failed inspection, and the repairs would be more expensive than the car was worth. Our living situation is hard. Logan's studio apartment was not designed for 2 people. We're constantly walking over each other, and his downstairs neighbor continues complaining to the owner about the extra noise. My complete skincare routine is currently stored in the bathroom sink because there is literally no other place to put it. Last night, I discovered my mascara in the kitchen cupboard, next to the ramen noodles. That is the amount of organization we're dealing with here. The financial hardship is becoming real. Between my limited hours at work and unanticipated charges, who thought moving would necessitate so many random purchases? We are both feeling the squeeze. I started selling clothes on Poshmark to save money. Logan has been picking up odd gigs on TaskRabbit, but they barely cover the necessities. We've become specialists in extending groceries. Rice and beans have become close companions. The problem reached a new low when I ran into my folks at Walmart while discount shopping. What followed was a scene straight out of a lousy drama. Tears in the cereal aisle, allegations about family devotion, and vague threats about Warren selling to a major corporation. We just got our essentials and went, but Mom noticed the generic brand products in our cart and began crying even more about how I deserve better than this life. Today's new torment was learning that my parents have reportedly been saving for my wedding since I was born. Mom shared images of the wedding fund passbook, a not-so-subtle reminder of what I'm tossing away. The guilt trip included childhood images and a screenshot of current wedding venue prices. To make matters worse, our proposed flat fell through. The landlord decided to rent to his nephew instead, so we are back at square one. Logan's lease expires in 2 weeks, and finding an affordable place is proving more difficult than anticipated. His friend Andre gave us his spare room temporarily, but accepting feels like giving up, especially because Andre lives in his parents' garage and his mother still does his laundry. Logan has been extremely supportive, but I can tell he is also feeling the strain. Yesterday, I discovered him staring at ramen containers with a discouraged expression that wounded my heart slightly. The engagement of extended family members is the most problematic. My phone is constantly ringing with texts from relatives I rarely see, all experts on why I'm making a horrible mistake. Vera keeps me up to date on things at home. Dad appears to be considering removing me from his will, which would be more concerning if there was anything to inherit. When I find myself doubting, I glance at Logan, perhaps playing Wordle on his phone or humming while washing dishes, and no, I can't give in. We are not a business merger. We are people. This is our lives. Even if we're currently sharing a single bath towel because we neglected to grab mine during the Great Escape, we're taking it day by day, looking for apartments during lunch breaks, blocking new numbers as they appear, and figuring out our next move. We still have each other, even if our current date nights consist of comparing property ads over microwave ramen. Second update. Hello Reddit. Some of you may remember me from my earlier post about my parents attempting to arrange my marriage to my father's best friend's son Dexter. A lot has happened in the last week, and I'm writing this from a motel room that costs $45 a night, eating leftover pizza, and still wearing the $30 Amazon outfit. It wasn't the wedding I envisioned as a child, but honestly, it was perfect in its own unusual manner. The idea to elope occurred after I discovered that my parents had already begun sending out pre-engagement party invitations to the luxury farm site they had reserved. My sister Vera sent me a photograph of the invitation. They had already decided on my future wedding name and everything. That was the last straw. Logan and I had already discussed marriage, especially since we had been living together for a few weeks. One night, while eating a bowl of microwave mac and cheese and staring out the window at our neighbor's cat, we've named her Princess despite the fact that she's not ours, we just knew. We scheduled it for a random Tuesday, not because it was special, but because we both had the day off work and the courthouse was open. Logan's friend Andre, not my father's friend, thank God, agreed to be our witness. I purchased a modest white dress from Amazon that actually looked better in photos, and Logan wore his one excellent button-down shirt, the one without wrinkles. Everything that could have gone wrong on the morning of happened. The zipper on my dress became caught. Logan's automobile made that strange noise again and would not start. We had to take an Uber to the courts and divide the cost 3 ways with Andre because we were all penniless. The driver continued wondering why we were dressed up, and we simply explained that we had a court appointment. Technically correct, right? The ceremony itself lasted maybe 10 minutes. The clerk was having her lunch as she processed our paperwork, and there was a man in the corner feverishly filling out jury service forms. Not quite romantic, but we couldn't stop smiling like idiots. Andre took photos with his phone. Most of the pictures are blurry, but there's one decent one in which Logan and I are just looking at each other and laughing because I almost dropped the $12 ring we received. We celebrated at the diner around the corner, sharing a plate of fries and a milkshake because that was all we had left from our wedding budget. Andre insisted on paying for his own coffee, claiming it was a wedding gift to us. When the waitress found out we had recently married, she handed us a free pie. This was the first bit of wedding luck we got all day. Then came the hard part. Telling people. We decided to do it with a simple Instagram post, just one good photo Andre took, with a casual caption. So, we did a thing. Ophelia responded first, sending a stream of heart emoticons. Then Vera called, both laughing and weeping. She was thrilled for us, but concerned about the consequences. She was right to be. My mother saw the post while at the grocery store. I know this because she contacted me from the parking lot, sobbing so hard that the cart attendant inquired if she required assistance. She kept claiming she would never be able to attend church again. How could you do this to our family? How about the venue deposit? Dad's reply came through Vera. He reportedly tossed his phone across the room when he saw the post. Warren, his best friend, quickly drove over to their house. Surprisingly, Dexter liked our Instagram picture and remarked, "Congratulations," which most likely exacerbated the situation. The extended family's reaction has been mixed: shocked Facebook messages, angry texts, and a few quiet congrats. My cousin even included me in a TikTok about ungrateful children. Really mature. We're now staying at this motel because our apartment application is still being processed, and Logan's lease expired yesterday. The room smells like old cigarettes, and the Wi-Fi frequently fails, yet it's our first home as a married couple. We've been making the most of our time by watching weird YouTube videos on Logan's phone and eating inexpensive takeout. Then the wedding venue called. It turns out that my parents attempted to cancel my engagement party but still lost the money. They're supposedly telling everyone that I forced them to book it, which is an interesting take of events. Money is still scarce. We're both working extra shifts when we can, and I'm selling more items on Poshmark. The apartment we applied for is not fancy. It's a ground floor, one bedroom with an unusual layout and no dishwasher, but it would be ours. The leasing agency stated they will notify us by Friday. Vera has been our primary source of news from home. Mom seemed to have already redecorated my previous room, taking down all of my photos and everything. Dad is informing everyone at work that I am going through a phase. Warren's wife is constantly trying to set up a family gathering to fix things. The most unusual reaction came from Dexter himself. He sent me a DM claiming he's relieved because he can finally tell his father about his girlfriend. They've been dating for almost a year, and she's not only a streamer, but also a single mother. Warren would certainly not approve. Logan and I are taking things day by day. Sometimes I wake up in a panic about everything we've done. Logan occasionally makes me chuckle, such as when he attempted to cook ramen in our hotel room's coffee machine. I remember why I selected this. It is not ideal. But this is ours. Third update. Sometimes the truth arrives in the most unexpected ways. In my instance, it came from a stack of water-damaged papers I discovered while assisting Vera in cleaning out our flooded basement following last week's storm. The basement incident occurred when Vera asked for assistance. Mom and Dad were at a church function, and she was worried about water getting in. Logan and I drove there to help preserve whatever we could. While shifting boxes to a higher level, I discovered Dad's old filing cabinet had turned over, spilling documents everywhere, most of which were drenched. As we went over what may be saved, I noticed something interesting. Loan papers. There are a lot of them. All with Warren's signature and my father as guarantee. The dates went back years. Small loans at first. Then larger ones. The most recent? From shortly before the whole marriage disaster began. Some had final notice stamps. Others had payment plans with missing checkmarks. It was like seeing a chronology of Warren's firm gradually falling. But this is when things get crazy. Mixed up with the loan papers were printed correspondence between Dad and a large development company. They wanted to buy both businesses, Dad's and Warren's, but only as a package deal. The offer was genuinely reasonable, enough to cover all of the debts and then some. Is there a catch? They sought confirmation of consistent succession planning. Essentially, they would not buy until they were confident that the businesses would remain together in the long run. That's where Dexter and I stepped in. We were the ideal solution for demonstrating that the businesses will continue to be controlled by families for many years. While we were still digesting this, Vera discovered other papers. Warren had been disguising how horrible things were from everyone, including his own wife. He had mortgaged their home twice without informing her. My father had co-signed everything, probably hoping Warren would turn things around soon. Then came the real kicker, a draft contract dated shortly before the whole marriage proposal saga. Warren had already begun selling off equipment to make payments. Dad was about to lose all he had worked for over 20 years because he trusted his best friend. I photographed everything before the water destroyed it totally and forwarded them to Dexter. He deserved to know. How did he respond? Well, that explains the rush. Apparently, his father had been pressuring him to settle down for months, even attempting to break up with his girlfriend. The next day, Ophelia came over to our flat with housewarming ramen, because that's what we do now. She had more tea. Warren's wife learned about the second mortgage and moved in with her sister. Dexter finally told everyone about his girlfriend and her child, then moved in with them. Warren? He's staying with his brother, presumably to give his wife some space. However, she most likely changed the locks. Dad still won't speak to me directly, but he started asking Vera strange questions about my new home. If I eat enough? That type of thing. Mom went from angry Facebook rants to sharing missing my daughter memes, which I suppose is an improvement. Yesterday, Warren texted me. Only 2 words. I'm sorry. I have not yet responded. Not sure if I will. Logan has been incredible during all of this. He doesn't say much about it, just embraces me when I need it and cracks bad jokes when I get too serious. Last night, he attempted to lighten the situation by suggesting that we start our own business. But something simple, he replied. Maybe selling those little hats for cats online. We are doing okay. The apartment is slowly coming together. We discovered an actual bed frame on Facebook Marketplace yesterday. Our upstairs neighbor's child practices trumpet at 7 a.m. every day, but we're getting accustomed to it. I'm picking up extra shifts at work, and Logan has started doing food delivery on weekends. It isn't flashy, but the bills are being paid. Vera claims Dad has been spending a lot of time in his garage lately. Probably trying to decide what to do next. When the deal failed, the development business withdrew its offer. She overheard Mom telling a friend on the phone that they might have to sell their house, which they'd lived in since before I was born. Part of me feels guilty, even though I know it's not my fault. Another part is furious that they attempted to utilize my life to solve their business difficulties. Mostly, I'm simply tired of the whole affair. Last update. I wasn't planning on posting again, but I just had the most weird Thanksgiving experience, and I thought you'd be interested in hearing how things turned out after the whole arranged marriage drama. First and foremost, Logan and I are still in our small apartment. We now have a solid bed frame. Goodbye, air mattress. The neighbor's son has progressed from trumpet to drums. Progress. What's the upside? We discovered that our other neighbor works at a furniture outlet, so we got a slightly damaged couch for almost nothing. It has a strange stain that resembles Danny DeVito if you squint, but it's comfortable. The biggest alteration occurred roughly 2 months ago. Mom began sending strange thinking of you texts, generally late at night while she was viewing weeping videos on Facebook. She then asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, mainly because I was tired of avoiding her at the grocery store. We met in the cafe where Logan and I celebrated our wedding reception. She cried into her coffee. I nervously stirred the tea. And somehow we ended up having a real chat. It turns out that Dad's business survived. Barely. They needed to shrink, sell some equipment, and relocate to a smaller office. Nonetheless, they are getting by. Warren's company wasn't as fortunate. Speaking of Warren, he and his wife have formally separated. Finally, she received the house. Remember those secret mortgages? He's still living with his brother, who has apparently begun charging him rent. Dexter is doing pretty well. He moved in with his fiancée and her child, started broadcasting on Twitch, and now makes a respectable living doing so. His mother informed my mother that he appears happier than he has been in years. He and Logan occasionally play games together. Which is strange. But that was kind of wonderful. Dad took a while to come around. The breakthrough occurred when our automobile broke down again. This item is currently held together by hope and duct tape. Logan was fixing it in the apartment parking lot when Dad arrived. Vera mentioned it to Mom, who then mentioned it to Dad. He didn't speak much. I just started assisting with the car. Now they have this strange habit of texting each other car maintenance videos. Dad still rarely speaks to me personally, but he will give Logan links to vehicle components for sale. Baby steps, I suppose. Thanksgiving was the real test. Mom had been hinting for weeks that we should visit. I was concerned, but Logan explained that free food is free food. We were still on a tight budget, so we went. It was awkward. South awkward. Aunt Alice continued to make sharp remarks about unconventional life choices. Uncle Bob pretended we weren't present. However, Vera and Ophelia handled the situation admirably. Mom actually hung our wedding photo on the mantle, right next to that terrible school picture of me from 7th grade with the braces and butterfly clips. What about the surprise guest? Warren's ex-wife. Apparently, she and Mom are still friends. She brought this delicious sweet potato casserole and spent the majority of supper telling everyone about her journey of self-discovery and new pastime. Dad seemed to want to dissolve into his mashed potatoes. What's the true highlight? Cousin Andre, not Logan's pal Andre, keep up, has announced his engagement. Everyone quickly began arranging this massive wedding, discussing venues, flowers, and other details. Mom caught my eye across the table and winked. Progress. Our flat is still small, but we have made it home. The ring finally stained my finger green, but I actually enjoyed it. It fits our aesthetic. Logan's car is still making that noise, but we are saving money for a new one. Slowly. Very slow. Work is work. Nothing spectacular, but we are both getting by. Logan began taking online computer science courses. I'm thinking about it too. But for now, I'm just trying to pick up more shifts wherever I can. Vera comes over frequently, typically with food from Mom. I believe she occasionally acts as Mom's spy, reporting back on whether our apartment is clean or if we are eating vegetables. But she also spreads rumors about Warren and Dexter. Apparently, Dexter's girlfriend's child now addresses him as Papa. Life is not perfect, but we are getting there. I thought I was just being clumsy, but then I found proof that my boyfriend was booby-trapping our apartment and now I am running for my life. Original post March 9, 2018. My boyfriend Alex and I have been together for 2 years, living together for less than 6 months. I would say that we have a fairly average relationship. We make each other really happy most of the time, but we do have our ups and downs. I am honestly so conflicted in writing this post because I feel a little insane even thinking about the possibility of him trying to hurt me intentionally. We've been fighting a lot lately because of conflicting work schedules. I'm currently in my intern year of residency, doing a night float month, so I'm at work from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m., roughly. He works during the daytime, regular hours as a CS engineer, and we haven't spent a lot of quality time together in several weeks, because of the lack of overlap. I'm going to work just as he's getting home, and vice versa. I have never had any issues with physical abuse from him. He has raised his voice at me on more than one occasion, but he's always apologized and it's been during very stressful times in our lives. His dad passed away last year. Our dog was killed in an accident on the street shortly thereafter. Recently though things have been happening in our apartment that makes me feel a little crazy. I've been getting hurt a lot, and Alex keeps reprimanding me that I need to be more careful and not be so clumsy, but honestly it feels like it's not me, but that things are being done, moved, placed. About 3 days ago I came home from work and was preparing something to eat in the kitchen, right after he left for work and I was getting ready to sleep. I opened up one of our kitchen cupboards and the heavy door flew off one of the hinges and smacked me in the head. I have a huge goose egg and a giant bruise near my hairline, enough that several coworkers have asked me about what happened. I honestly think I had a very mild concussion from it, based on my symptoms this week. But here's the thing, as I tried to put the door back together, I couldn't find the hinge or 3 screws anywhere afterward. They should have been on the floor or the counter, and they weren't. This morning when I got home from work and I was getting ready to go to bed, I opened up Alex's underwear drawer to get a pair of socks to wear to bed. There were the screws, the hinge, and a screwdriver. Last week I got up in the middle of my sleep schedule to use the bathroom, and I slammed my shin into the edge of our bed. There is always enough room for me to shimmy by, but later on, when I looked at the bed and my leg, there were carpet marks like the bed had been shifted about 12 inches towards the wall, making my space smaller. I honestly feel insane even thinking about bringing this up with him, but I don't know what to do. TL Ducker, I feel like my apartment is booby-trapped, and maybe my boyfriend did it on purpose to hurt me, but I feel insane bringing it up. Top comments. Comment 1. Judging in my 10 years with a narcissistic psycho, you're not crazy. Start writing these incidents down, take pictures, etc. and keep it all logged somewhere he doesn't have access, your phone, in case it escalates. Having proof will mean a huge difference if you end up having to go to the cops. Comment 2. Also taking picture records just for yourself will help you maintain your sanity. Upload them to a secure, hidden cloud account your programmer BF doesn't know about. Frankly, he sounds like a fucking psycho from what you've written here. I could never forgive someone for hurting me like that. Sure, he didn't punch you, but is it really that different? He wanted a giant heavy piece of wood to fall on your face. Comment 3. There is no good reason for those hinges, 8-inch screws to be in his underwear drawer. Nor for moving the bed. Something is decidedly wrong here. It's time to pay attention. 2 incidents are bad enough, you don't want to suffer another. While he's not around, take advantage. Search. Examine those things you use often for signs like these. Find anything which confirms your suspicions. Bail on this relationship. Update March 18, 2018, 9 days later. Hello all. I just want to start off by saying thank you to everyone who messaged me with advice and input about my last post found here. Like the title states, I suspected my boyfriend was booby-trapping our apartment for some unknown reason and gaslighting me, and I was right. 2 days after I posted, our showerhead came loose and sprung off at me. Smacked me in the back of head, and due to the water pressure, I needed 8 stitches to close the wound. I texted my BF about what had happened, and that I needed to go into work for stitches. I'm a resident, and he was way too nonchalant. He asked if I had bumped it or anything to cause it to come off. I'd had enough at that point. I wasn't going to ask him about the things that were happening, I was just going to move out, on before I ended up dead. I made a plan that on Thursday I would have a friend come over as soon as Alex left the apartment, to help me pack my things and leave. I was worried about any potential cameras he may have hidden, so I flipped the breaker and turned off the power in our apartment. About 3 hours into packing up, Alex came home. In the 6 months that we've lived together, he has never once come home for lunch, so there must have been a camera planted somewhere with an external power source. He doesn't even pretend to waltz through the door, he bursts open and gets furious and asks what the fuck we are doing. Not sad, not confused, straight up angry. That was the only sign I needed. All I said was, I know about the cabinet, and the bed, and the dresser, you watching me, and my jewelry, and it's done. We're done. He responded with the standard, your fate's insane, you're crazy, this is insane, etc., etc. This is the point where I am thinking, am I going to end up on a Dateline NBC episode? I yelled to my friend in the next room that she needed to call the police to come supervise while we finished packing. Alex decided to take this moment to call the police and claim that I was insane and stealing things from our apartment. 2 uniformed officers rolled up within what seemed like only a minute and came upstairs. I explained that I was moving out and there was abuse. I wasn't interested in pressing charges, but they needed to supervise and file a report for documentation. I ended up finishing packing and then spending nearly an hour down at the police station hashing everything out with the officer who arrived first. I took personal leave from work for the second half of last week and tomorrow is my first day back. I'm staying with a friend right now until I move in with another resident near our hospital in about 2 weeks. Overall, I'm really relieved to be out of the situation, but I'm generally still pretty afraid of Alex and anything he might try to do in the future. Out of an abundance of caution, I took both my iPhone, iPad, and laptop to the Apple Store and had them do hard resets, wipes just in case he had planted anything. I'm not sure how I should be feeling right now. But I'm just going to say that for anyone out there questioning whether your situation is abusive or not, go with your gut and trust your friends and family. TL@R. My boyfriend booby-trapped our apartment and gaslit me. I moved out and I'm safe now. I thought I was just being clumsy. But then I found proof that my boyfriend was booby-trapping our apartment and now I am running for my life. Original post. I manage a team of 12 people and last year had a 13th member added when other managers refused to deal with him any longer. He is diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder. He is morbidly obese and suffers from musculoskeletal problems related to obesity and diabetes. When they came to me it was because I have helped other mentally ill staff members and I was happy to take them on as I felt I could help them. We did make progress and steadily increased their level of work. It has never reached the level considered acceptable, but I made accommodations to relieve pressure, hoping this would lead to a sustained long-term improvement. I sought out equipment to help them be more physically comfortable given their obesity. I felt we were making progress. Unfortunately, they committed a serious breach of security, sent out personal information to someone not legally entitled to have it, and I had to place them on formal disciplinary action. Since then they have been on sick leave for over 3 months. They are now subject to attendance management procedures and have reached out to a local mental health group and advised them that I have bullied and harassed them. This bullying and harassment has, according to them, has made it impossible for them to return to work. I have documented evidence that this is not true. When they were told they needed to move away from me for health and safety reasons, they became very distressed and demanded to stay with me for mental health reasons. I have signed documentation where they state I am supportive and they don't want the reasonable accommodations I have offered, shorter days, fewer days, longer breaks, etc. I have a meeting with them and their support workers from the mental health group and I have no idea how to handle this. So how do I handle it? I can prove they are lying and they have a pattern of lying to get themselves out of trouble. I have no concerns about my bosses because they are well aware that this is an utterly unfounded allegation. My worry is that they are completely unsuited to the job and because they point blank refuse to acknowledge they are in any way responsible for the mistakes they are making, it is impossible to correct them. TLDR have been accused of bullying when I haven't relevant comments. When told to go to HROUP, I have spoken with our internal HR, but they are terrified that any accusations of bullying a person with mental health problems could be problematic, as it is a hot topic at present. I have referred the person for counseling internally and they have told me repeatedly, documented, that they have taken up this service. My concern is this meeting is not an internal meeting, it is with people who specifically represent people with mental health problems, and I don't know how to respectfully say that the person is lying through their teeth without sounding like a bully. To be clear, their lies aren't malicious and I don't believe this one is either. It is something said to solve an immediate need, so in this case it is because they need to explain the amount of time they have had off sick, and admitting it is because of their own actions is too terrifying. So, I am being bullied, means it's something that is happening to them and they have no control over it. The reality is they do have control over it, but they are so used to being the victim in all situations that they refuse to acknowledge this is not actually true. Comment: judging from your explanation here, it appears that you have an understanding and empathetic attitude toward this person and situation. That attitude, along with the documentation you have regarding accommodations you've offered, should go a long way in your defense. What, exactly, is he saying you've done to bully him? I am not a professional in this area, just have extensive experience working with people with mental health problems in social work education settings. OP. He believes that by pointing out his security breach and substandard level of work I have bullied him. He doesn't allege that he isn't doing this, just that by expecting more I am bullying and harassing him. I am making allowances. For example, other members of staff are expected to deal with approximately 16 cases a day accurately. I am happy for him to do 2 if he does them right. Unfortunately, he can do 2 cases but not correctly. Unfortunately, by allowing him to work at a slower pace, he believes that he should be allowed the same scope of error that someone who is working 16 cases, and as such he is being bullied by expecting him to get his 2 cases 100% right when someone who is working 16 cases has an allowance for minor errors. OOP explains HR more. Yeah, HR's response is basically fire him but don't leave us open to a lawsuit. It is not helpful because I don't want to fire him. He is not currently in a position to do his job to the standard required, but I don't want to detrimentally impact his future. He won't resign for health reasons as he feels it will prevent him getting another job, and HR want him gone without actually doing anything. I'm stuck in the middle because as manipulative as his mental health issues are, they are real. If I wouldn't get fired for doing it, I'd post a copy of the 4-page email I got in response to my specific questions. It was large swathes of the DDA copied and pasted with vague remarks about support, reasonable allowances, and work-life balance. I can only assume they put someone's idiot nephew in charge of the email box on the day I contacted them. They are centralized and are notorious for not giving out specific instructions for fear of having them challenged. Their main purpose is to protect themselves. I have no idea how they keep their jobs, to be honest. Whoop. Last comment. Thank you. His previous warnings have been well documented and evidenced, so I am not too concerned about legal action. I was just really thrown off by the accusation of bullying and harassment and had built up a scenario where I was going to be attacked by his advocates. The great responses like yours has put my mind at ease. It is sad that he has cast himself as the victim in all of this, but I am determined not to be drawn into that mindset, and I won't allow myself to cast into the role of their oppressor because it is simply not true. Update September 18, 2017, 3 months later. Well, the meeting went ahead as planned, and thanks to the wonderful advice and tips from people who kindly responded, I was calm and thought I was prepared. Boy, was I wrong. My colleague and his support worker were both there, and the meeting started really well. I asked how he was doing, what steps he was taking to prepare himself to return to work, etc., and nothing unexpected came up. As arranged, I brought up the allegations of bullying and asked for some specific examples to help me understand what was happening. After worrying myself sick about this, his answer was actually pretty disappointing. He gave no examples and only offered vague explanations about his anxiety making him overreact to other people's conversations, which made him feel like he was being picked on. I advised him, and my boss backed me up, that there was literally nothing I could do about that. I patiently explained that I could not ban people from talking and I would not sit in silence in order to ensure that he never heard anything he didn't like. My boss stressed that his poor performance needed to be addressed and that was part of my job, and that doing it was in no way harassment. His support worker did agree with that, and we had a brief chat about how I could better communicate. To be honest, there was nothing they said that was particularly helpful, but I did agree to be mindful of their condition moving forward. Then it got weird. I asked if there was anything I could do to help him transition back into work. This normally involves a phased return, changing to part-time hours, etc., but not this time. As I was talking, he started taking paperwork out of a folder, and I should have realized something was up when his support worker sighed deeply and slumped down in his chair. My colleague requested that he be allowed to bring an emotional support animal to work with him, namely a support cat. We are in the UK and this is not the norm, so I was a bit surprised. He had not settled on a breed yet but was torn between an Abyssinian or a Siamese. I thought pointing out some obvious difficulties with this idea might make him realize how inappropriate this would be. For example, I pointed out we have a guide dog in the building for a partially sighted colleague. His name is Rufus and is by far the most popular person in the building, the dog not the human. And they may not get along with a cat. He responded by telling me that it was illegal to discriminate by favoring one disability over another, and if a blind person could have a guide dog, a depressed person could have a cat. I moved on from this, clearly idiotic, point and asked how a cat would react to being placed in a pet carrier twice a day to travel to and from work. He advised me he would train the cat. My boss became very agitated at this point, demanding, "How the hell do you train a cat?" Not to be deterred, my colleague stated that in the worst-case scenario he would leave the cat at work overnight and only take him home on weekends. I asked how he intended to cope with litter tray cleaning, etc. Given his serious weight issues, bending down to empty a litter tray would be difficult for him. He presented me with a spreadsheet he had created with a team rota for cleaning up after the cat and feeding. He had also cost out food, insurance and the actual cost of the cat on said spreadsheet, had an expected donation from each team member, on a sliding scale depending on how he perceived their financial circumstances to be. I was paying the most as I am single, earn more and have no dependent children. The spreadsheet was quite impressive, color-coded and everything. I politely said no to that and he then started insisting the company should pay as it would be a legitimate business expense to accommodate his disabilities. At this point I realized my boss was still repeating, "How the hell do you train a cat?" And the support worker was shaking his head and muttering, "I told you not to do this." So I made a unilateral decision on behalf of my company and advised him in no certain terms that we would not be buying any cats, we would not be cleaning up after any cats because we would not be permitting him to bring any cats onto the premises. He was not happy. He complained that I was making it impossible for him to return to work. My boss took a break from his cat training mantra to say that we had perhaps gone as far as we could for the time being and we should end the meeting at this point. As we were leaving, he did make a point of telling the support worker, "There will be no bloody cats." The support worker nodded and agreed this was entirely fair. I didn't hear anything from him for a week or so, then I received another 4-week sick note from him, so I called, as per our company procedure, to check in and see how he was doing. He was still very unhappy about my discriminatory anti-cat stance and advised he would be taking it further. 2 weeks later I received a letter from what initially looked like a local solicitor's office. It advised me I was being sued for breaking disability discrimination laws. The letter itself was filled with bizarre, mainly, American legalese that seemed to be culled from Law and Order episodes. On closer examination, the letterhead had been edited to change the contact details to his home phone number and personal mobile. I'm not sure whose address he used, but it wasn't the solicitors in question. I handed it to my boss, who had also received one, so both were forwarded to our legal department. I was advised to have no further contact with him. The legal bodies have informed me that his contract has been terminated with immediate effect. I am honestly stunned as to how it turned out. I half expected him to be terminated due to the amount of time off sick and his unwillingness to address his performance issues, but I would never have guessed it would end like this. It is both funny and sad. Thank you so much to everyone who took the time to calm my nerves before the meeting. It really did mean the world to me. TLDR. Meeting started fine, took a weird turn and went downhill from there. My fiancée cheated and said I'd never find someone like her. A year later, I'm dating a model who had a crush on me since high school. So, when going around Reddit the other day, I came across this post about a guy whose girlfriend was cheating on him and didn't care. She was absolutely honest about it, as if it were no big deal. It was insane, and it made me think about my ex-girlfriend. I haven't told many people about this incident, mostly because it's long and, well, it was unpleasant at the time. But after reading that post, I thought, what the heck, I might as well give it a chance. Keep in mind that this occurred approximately 2 years ago. I met my ex, let's call her Chloe, through a dating app. It wasn't one of those applications seeking a quick hookup. It was one of the more serious ones, with people reportedly hoping for a relationship. Anyway, at the time, I was 33 and she was 30. We matched, chatted, and there was an instant connection. It's difficult to explain, but we just understood each other. We shared the same sense of humor, interests, and could talk for hours without becoming bored. It was very refreshing. After a few weeks of online and phone conversations, I eventually invited her out on an actual date. I was a little nervous, to be honest, because she was so lovely. I mean, breathtakingly stunning. I am not suggesting I am a troll or anything. I think I'm a decent-looking guy, but she was clearly in a different league. I remember thinking at the time that I probably wouldn't be looking for anything serious with her because, girls like that usually have a lot of options. I did not want to have my heart broken. Being with someone who is overly attractive is a strange problem, I know, but it can provide its own set of challenges. Anyway, she agreed to the date, and we had a great time. It just validated everything I felt during our internet conversations. We started seeing each other more frequently after that, and it became formal very quickly. One thing that was continually on my mind was how much attention she received from other men. She would tell me about it occasionally, even when we were together. A guy would shamelessly hit on her in front of me, or she'd receive messages from guys via social media. At first, I wasn't concerned by it. I trusted her. I got the impression that she wasn't interested in anyone else and was truly interested in me. Stupid, I know, but that's how I felt at the moment. I was simply enjoying being with her, and I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure lover. Things were going great, really great, except for one tiny item that kept lingering in my mind. We were having one of those crazy late-night chats where you speak about random things, and the subject of hall passes came up. If you're not familiar with the term, it refers to a hypothetical situation in which you and your partner each got to choose one celebrity with whom you would be allowed to sleep, no questions asked. It's meant to be a jest, a bit of fun, but it can occasionally expose some underlying sentiments. Anyway, she brought it up, which struck me as weird. Usually, I'm the one who initiates such silly chats. She said her hall pass was Justin Timberlake, which is fair enough. He's a nice-looking guy. But then she said something that really resonated with me. She added, "I don't think there are many celebrities who would say no to me," with a slight smirk, as if she was entirely serious. Now, I knew she was beautiful, I had always known that, but hearing her say it in that way simply rubbed me wrong. She seemed to be accepting that she could have pretty much any guy she wanted, which made me uneasy. It seemed out of character for her too. Despite her outward appearance, she had always been quite approachable. It just felt arrogant. It made me feel uneasy. I said nothing at the moment. I just laughed it off and we went on to the next issue. But the comment persisted in the back of my mind. I kept thinking about it throughout the next few days. The feeling vanished, and things returned to normal, but I never forgot about it. The shift in her behavior, things were going really well for a while after the hall pass chat, but then I noticed a shift in her behavior. It was faint at first, but as time passed, it grew increasingly clear. She began arriving home later than usual. Normally, she'd arrive home from work about 6 p.m., but she began arriving at 7 p.m., maybe 7:30, or even later. And what were the arguments she gave? They were basically lame excuses. She'd say things like, "Oh, I just lost track of time," or "I ran into a friend and we chatted for a bit." It was strange because she used to be so thorough about her day. If she was late due to work, she'd tell me everything, what project she was working on, who she spoke with, and so on. Now, it was simply these vague, meaningless reasons. On top of that, she became quite irritable. If I inquired why she was late, she would snap at me. She'd become defensive, claiming I was being overly controlling or that I didn't trust her. I didn't want to fight, so I usually backed away. I am not a confrontational person, especially when someone is already in a foul attitude. However, the late nights persisted, as did the nebulous reasons. My suspicion began to deepen. It was like a small voice in the back of my head saying, "Something's not right here." I tried to ignore it, but it became increasingly difficult, confrontations and denials. Finally, I asked her if there was anything wrong. I said, "Is everything okay? You seem different lately?" She denied it, of course. She responded, "No, everything's fine. I'm just stressed with work." The usual. I wanted to believe her. I actually did. A few days passed, and the same things happened. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I informed her again that her behavior was unusual and that I was concerned. This time, she appeared to understand what I was saying. In reality, she apologized, claiming that it was all due to stress and exhaustion and insisting that it was nothing personal. I got what she was saying. But I couldn't get myself to believe it. The fake explanations after that chat, things appeared to improve, at least on the surface. She was more receptive and conversational. When she got home late, she'd tell me stories about what she'd been doing. But they simply felt hollow. There was something about the way she told them, the lack of information, the avoidance of eye contact, that didn't feel right. I remember one particular night. She arrived home late and told me a story about running into an old coworker and having drinks with him. And I knew she was lying. It was like a light bulb went out in my head. I can't describe it, but I received the overpowering impression that she was hiding something really important. And that's when the thought occurred to me. She was having an affair. It wasn't just a minor issue or misunderstanding. This was a full-blown affair. I knew I couldn't simply let it go. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I needed to discover the truth, one way or another. Her conduct had shifted dramatically from the woman I first met. It was impossible to ignore. This was not the person I had fell for before. Something was clearly wrong, and I was determined to find out what it was. The plan. Okay, I'm sitting there, convinced that my girlfriend is cheating on me. My initial thought was, I need to check her phone. I mean, that's where all the proof should be, right? Text messages, emails, social media, everything. But I quickly knew it wouldn't work. First and foremost, she was always on her phone, making it very impossible to take it away long enough to conduct a thorough search. Even if I did comprehend it, I'm not exactly a tech expert. I wouldn't know where or what to look for, and she'd probably removed anything damning anyhow. Plus, I needed proof. I didn't want to locate a questionable text message and then confront her with it. I wanted to catch her in the act, to know without a doubt. So I decided to take a different way. Hire a private investigator. Yeah, I understand. It seems like something out of a film, but I was desperate. I needed the truth. And I wanted someone who knew what they were doing to guide me to it. I wanted to know who this guy was and where they were meeting. I conducted a Google search for private investigators in my area and discovered one with positive reviews. I contacted them up and scheduled a meeting. I remember being quite scared when I walked into their office. It seemed like I was accepting defeat. I sat down with the investigator, a guy who appeared to have seen it all before, and told him everything. I recounted the entire event, from the hallway conversation to the late nights and lame explanations. It took a while, but he just listened calmly and nodded. He made no judgments about me. He did not make me feel foolish. He was just listening. Then he stated he'd seen this type of thing 100 times before. He preferred to do surveillance for 2 weeks because her late nights were variable, but this would be somewhat costly. We ultimately agreed on 10 days. I gave him all of her contact information, including her phone number, email address, and where she worked. Before I departed, he told me not to contact him until the 10 days were up, unless it was an emergency. It'll be difficult, he told me, but you need to let me do my job. I agreed. I knew it would be torment, but I had to believe him. The longest 10 days of my life. These 10 days were among the longest of my life. It was awful to know that this investigator was following my fiancée and could unearth proof that confirmed my darkest concerns. I felt helpless, just waiting, wondering, and thinking all kinds of possibilities. It was difficult to focus on anything else. Work was a nightmare. I could not sleep. I barely ate. And the worst part? Throughout the 10 days, she consistently arrived home late. 3 times, she arrived home after 9 p.m., using the same tired, pathetic justifications. Oh, I had last-minute plans with some friends. Traffic was terrible. She had no idea that every time she said those things, it further confirmed my suspicions that she was lying. Each time she was late, I thought, okay, this is it? This is when the investigator will catch her. It simply offered him more opportunities to get the evidence I required. The truth comes out. Finally, the 10-day period ended. The investigator phoned me precisely on time. He didn't say much over the phone, just that he had the information I needed and asked if we could meet in person. I answered, yes, absolutely. This was something I needed to hear face to face. I couldn't bear hearing this kind of news over the phone. I had been waiting for what seemed like an eternity, and I needed to see his expression to know for certain that what he was telling me was true. I drove to his office, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I felt terrible to my stomach. When I stepped in, he was sitting with a manila envelope on the desk in front of him. He motioned for me to sit down. Then he asked if I wanted him to simply explain what he discovered or if I wanted to examine the contents of the package myself. I said I wanted to hear it from him first. I thought it would soften the blow a little. In my brain, I compared it to walking in on your partner cheating and having a moment to brace yourself before the gut punch. He took a big breath and replied, "Your suspicions were correct." Just like that. There's no avoiding the issue. There's no sugarcoating it. He informed me that he had followed her to an apartment building 3 times. She went in alone and left about 2 hours later, always with the same man. He had obtained the apartment number and the individual's name. Cody. Obviously, I'm changing the name. To be honest, my initial thought was that I wanted to find this Cody person, and let's just say I was not thinking peacefully. But then I realized this wasn't the point. The point was that my girlfriend, the lady I adored, had deceived me. That's what I needed to concentrate on. The investigator slid the envelope across the desk. I opened it. And there they were. Pictures. Photos of her and this Cody guy in front of the apartment building. Embracing, holding hands, kissing, in front of her car. Everything was there, in black and white. Unquestionable proof. I almost lost my mind. I almost broke down right there in his office. It was one thing to suspect something, to have a gut instinct. But seeing it with my own eyes was a very different experience. The visual evidence was very overwhelming. I managed to keep back tears, although it was difficult. It wasn't just the affair, it was the realization that my entire life, the future I had planned with her, was falling in front of me. The confrontation, I wasn't sure what to do next, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of this. I was about to confront her. When I arrived home, I asked her to sit down. I did not yell. I didn't create a scene. I said quietly, "We need to talk." She was aware that something was off. She saw it on my face. She sat down, and I simply lay everything out. I informed her I knew about the affair. I told her I'd hired a private investigator. I informed her that I had proof. Her first emotion was shock. She simply stared at me, her mouth slightly wide. Then she attempted to calm down, to act as if nothing had happened. But I wouldn't have it. I told her what the investigator told me. About the residential building. About Cody. Everything. And she simply sat there. Silent. She did not refute it. She did not apologize. She did not even attempt to explain. She just sat there listening. The more I talked, the angrier I became. Her silence was infuriating. She didn't seem to care, or to be sorry for what she'd done. Finally, I could not take it any longer. I told her I wanted to break up. I responded, "I can't do this anymore, I can't keep playing this song and dance, I'm done." And then, she did something very unexpected. She laughed. She stepped up as if to frighten me and began this full monologue. "You want to leave me?" she inquired. "Are you kidding? So what?" I had a little bit of excitement on the side. It was just physical, it didn't mean anything. I'm a cheater, fair. But where do you think you'll go from here? Do you think you'll ever get someone like me again? Hasn't it been clear to you over the years that I'm out of your league? It was one time, is that what you want to destroy our lives over? She spoke a lot more in that vein, essentially attempting to make me feel lucky. That I should simply be grateful to be with her, even if she cheated. Can you believe it? I was stunned. I knew she was arrogant, I knew she thought well of herself. However, this was a whole new level. This was not a sincere apology. This was hardly the reaction of someone who had been caught and wanted to make amends. This was the response of someone who didn't give a damn. Someone having a genuine F-it attitude. A true crash-out mentality. It seemed as if her ideal scenario was for me to simply accept that she was too good for me, that she would do whatever she pleased, and that I should be content to be along for the trip. She honestly believed I wouldn't have the courage to leave. That's how proud she was of herself. Her comment struck me like a ton of bricks. I'd felt wounded and outraged before, but this was different. This was pure fury. I'd never felt anything like it. I stood up, looked her directly in the eyes, and told her how much I detested her. I don't remember the precise words, but they were along those lines. And then I walked out. I didn't bring a bag. I did not say farewell. I simply stepped out the door. I couldn't bear to be in the same room as her for another second. I felt completely betrayed. It was over. The aftermath, I ended up staying the night in a cheap motel. I couldn't return to the house, not yet. I just needed to be alone and contemplate all that had transpired. I laid there in that uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing the confrontation in my mind over and over. I couldn't believe the way she reacted. It was simply unbelievable. The next day, I returned to the house to get some of my belongings. I assumed she would be at work. But she was present. She appeared to have been crying, but she was attempting to play tough, as if nothing was wrong. And then, get this. She had the nerve to reply, "I knew you'd be back," with a smug little grin on her face. As if I had just thrown a small tantrum and crawled back to her. I didn't say anything. I just went inside and grabbed some clothes, toiletries, and other necessities. I knew I couldn't acquire everything at once, but all I wanted was to get out of there as soon as possible. I replied, "I'll be back for the rest of my stuff later." She just stood there staring at me, her face filled with disbelief. As if she couldn't believe I was leaving. She said nothing till I was walking out the door. Then she merely whispered something under her breath, which I didn't catch. And frankly, I didn't mind. I've been trying to understand why she acted the way she did. I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around it. Perhaps she was looking for validation or excitement outside of our relationship. Perhaps she was insecure about becoming older or about our routine. Perhaps she regarded me as a safe, dependable, cuddly husband, but also as someone who she considered beneath her. And perhaps because she had always felt that way, she did not consider the infidelity to be a huge problem. She'd already rationalized it in her mind. Of course, all of this is just me guessing, attempting to make sense of something that does not make sense. The aftermath. After I departed, she began contacting me. The first few messages were mocking and caustic, as if she thought the whole thing was a joke and that I would just run back to her. She definitely believed I was lying. That I would not go through with leaving, but, a few days later, I returned to the house with a friend to retrieve the remainder of my possessions. And she was shocked. She could not believe I was being serious. I believe it was the moment she realized it was truly over. One of her final texts to me read, "I hope you know you'll never find anyone like me again." Seriously? I blocked her after that. I couldn't take it anymore. It was simply too much. Moving on. Okay, let's skip ahead a bit. The whole breakup with Chloe was a shambles, and it took me a bit to get my bearings. But life continues, right? A few months later, I had my 15-year high school reunion. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go, but a number of my friends persuaded me. It ended up being a great time. It was nice to see all the old faces and meet up with people I hadn't seen in years. Just a really upbeat, enjoyable vibe. And then, there was Veronica. Enter Veronica. Veronica attended my high school class. She was a tall, stunningly beautiful girl. We were cordial and took some classes together, but we were not particularly close. She was one of those girls who was just naturally cool, you know? After high school, she became a model, and a rather successful one at that. I had seen her in some magazines and internet advertisements. If you're into fashion, you may recognize her name. I hadn't spoken to her in at least 7 years, possibly more. So I'm at the reunion, having a nice time, when I realize that Veronica isn't present. However, her best friend from high school was. They were still really close, which I thought was fantastic. It demonstrated that Veronica had not changed much despite her success. I went over to see her friend just to say hello and catch up. We were talking, and she kept a wide smile on her face the entire time. When I named Veronica, her smile grew even wider. She made a face and continued. "I know she's going to kill me for telling you this, but, you know she's always had a crush on you?" I just chuckled. I mean, come on. Veronica, a successful model, have a crush on me? It appeared utterly ludicrous. Even in high school, we didn't run in the same circles. We were friendly, but not more. There was no way. Also, becoming a model now? There's no chance. It was flattering, of course, to think that someone like her would find me beautiful. But I assumed that was just a high school event that she'd long forgotten about. I told her buddy that I didn't think Veronica remembered me, but she insisted. She explained that Veronica had requested her to check me out at the reunion to see if I still looked as nice as I did in high school. And then she continued. "She's still into you, so if you're single and you're not scared of girls with baggage, you might as well give it a shot." I spent the remainder of the night reflecting on the talk. It was all so unexpected. I won't lie, it felt wonderful to know that someone like Veronica was interested in me, especially after what had occurred with Chloe. It felt as if here was this woman who my ex would have deemed out of my league, and she was allegedly crushing on me. It made me understand how useless Chloe's remarks were, and how much she wanted to bring me down. It provided a significant confidence boost. Taking a chance. Following the reconnection, I decided to take a chance. I figured, what could I lose? I decided to contact Veronica online, as the kids say. I found her on Instagram and messaged her. I also informed Veronica's friend that I was going to message her in case she did not check her direct messages from people she did not follow. I did not want my message to be lost in the mix. And then I waited. And waited. And waited. I waited 5 days and heard nothing. I'd completely forgotten about it, to be honest. I believed she was probably busy, or that her buddy had exaggerated things. I wasn't too concerned about it. But, ultimately, she replied. And her message was quite enthusiastic. She wrote, "Oh my gosh, Keith, it's been so long. Now, I've heard that the more letters a woman repeats in her text to you, the more she likes you. I'm not sure if it is accurate, but it felt like a good sign." We began messaging back and forth, catching up on pretty much everything. We spoke about high school. About what we have been up to since then. About our jobs. Our families. Everything. After a few days, Veronica recommended we switch to FaceTime. She claimed she was tired of typing so much. I was delighted, of course, and we began making video chats virtually every day. A deeper connection. During those video talks, I began to understand more about her life as a model. She told me everything about the industry, the travel, the photo shoots, the ups and downs. She was in Brussels at the time, working on a campaign, and even gave me some photos from the set. That was fascinating. And it was awesome to watch her in her environment. It also allowed us to connect on a deeper level while being thousands of miles apart. After a few weeks of almost daily communication, it began to seem like we were dating. We hadn't formally called it that, but it seemed like more than simply friendship. So, I decided to be a little corny and simply ask her, "What are we?" She chuckled and said we were really wonderful friends, but she wanted to be more. I saw this as a cue to ask her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. She quickly agreed. With no hesitation, it was a wonderful feeling. The long-distance challenge. Obviously, the long-distance aspect was challenging. She was a model traveling the world, while I was here doing my regular work. I had a long-distance relationship when I was younger, and I despised it. It was difficult to maintain that connection, to feel like you were truly a part of each other's lives. But this was different. This was Veronica, and she was already so important to me that I was willing to go to any length to make it work. So I booked a flight to Brussels to see her. She was going to be there for a few weeks working on a project, so I decided it was the perfect time to see her and get a taste of her culture. The trip that changed everything. The trip was just stunning. Brussels was beautiful, of course, but being there with Veronica was incredible. It seemed like a dream come true. It taught me that I shouldn't give up on love because of a single negative experience, that there were still excellent people out there, people worth the effort. She even brought me to one of her photo shoots. I got to watch her work, see her in her element, cheer her on from the sidelines, and take some of my own photos. It was so great to watch her doing what she loved, and it made me feel even more connected to her, as if I were truly a part of her life. The Instagram mishap. So I was in Brussels, having the time of my life with Veronica. I took a lot of photos during the photo shoot and decided to share a few of them on Instagram. I didn't upload them to my main feed, though. Instead, I shared them on my close friend's story, expecting just a limited group of individuals to view them. Here's the thing. I completely forgot about my ex, Chloe, who was still on my close friends list. I rarely use Instagram, so I didn't think to block her there. I had blocked her everywhere else, but not Instagram. A big mistake. I received a message from her just a few hours after posting the photos. Remember, we hadn't spoken in almost a year by this point. The message stated, "Who's that? Why are you playing groupie?" A laughing emoji appears next. I quietly responded, "That's my girlfriend." I said nothing else. She did not respond right away. I could see the little typing sign emerge and disappear several times over the following 10 minutes, as if she was writing something, deleting it, and then writing something new. Finally, she only sent a snarky message. Sure. The final goodbye. That's when I decided to try it. I informed her that she didn't have to trust me. Then I said, "If you thought you were out of my league, then Veronica is out of this world." I also questioned her. "How's your man from back then doing?" I knew it would sting. She read the message, but did not respond. And then I blocked her on Instagram. I realize it was probably petty of me to say those things. But really? I believed she earned it. And I did not want her to have any further access to my life. Any more opportunities to get under my skin? Even yet, I'll admit that I was curious about her reaction. I'll admit it. Happy ever after? And that, my friends, concludes the story. It's been an exciting voyage, to say the least. But I can honestly tell that I am happier than I have ever been. Veronica and I have been dating happily ever since our vacation to Brussels. And I won't lie, I'm thinking about proposing before the end of the year. Don't tell her, however. Veronica is a true blessing in my life. She is kind, she's funny, she is intelligent, she's stunning, both inside and out. And she makes me feel like the luckiest man in the world. I am really relieved that things did not work out with Chloe, because if they had, I would not have met Veronica. I understand that some people may criticize me. Could respond, "Oh, he's just with her because she's a model." Thus, long distance never works. But I don't care. I refuse to let anyone's criticism spoil my relationship with Veronica. She is great, and I'm quite thrilled. If things don't work out, you may come back here and tell me I told you so. But God knows, I don't see me penning another piece here. So, that's it. That is my story. It's a story of treachery, heartbreak, and eventually finding love and happiness in the most unexpected places. Thank you for listening. Reading, I suppose. My grandpa saved $50,000 for my education, but my parents spent it on my sister's sweet 16 and a luxury trip. I, 25F, have been working at an architecture business for the past 2 years, and I need to discuss something that has been eating me alive. Familial favoritism. Not just slight biases, but overt, obvious favoritism that has influenced my entire life. Let me clarify. My parents treat my younger sister, Sophia, 18F, as if she is the center of the universe, while I might as well be invisible. Have you seen the memes about the golden child versus the scapegoat? That's my life, detailed in agonizing detail. Growing up, every birthday became a reminder of this reality. On my 16th birthday, I received a used laptop that could only run basic applications. Sophia's Sweet 16 celebration included a full venue rental, a live band, and even a professional photographer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. I've always been drawn to architecture. Even as a child, I would spend hours with my construction blocks, constructing complicated structures as my parents admired Sophia's bizarre dancing movements in the living room. "Look how naturally talented she is," they'd exclaim, while my meticulously crafted structures were tossed aside without a glance. This pattern persisted through our lives. When I was in college, I took first prize in a major architectural design competition. It was a breakthrough moment in my career, the kind of triumph that leads to new opportunities. I alerted my parents about the awards event several weeks in advance, believing that this time would be different. My mother casually stated to me the morning before the ceremony that they would be unable to attend. "We have errands to run," she added, barely looking up from her phone, which was probably showing Sophia's most recent Instagram photos. I ended up asking my friend's mother to snap photos, holding back tears as I got my prize in front of a crowd of ecstatic parents. Sophia signed up for a high school dancing competition 3 months later. My parents were overjoyed when she came in second place, not first. They gave her flowers, took her out to a lavish supper, and documented everything on every social media outlet they could find. "Our talented daughter is following her dreams," they wrote. I sat at that supper, pushing food around my plate, wondering why her dreams were so much more valuable than mine. The instances are numerous. When my outdated phone eventually died, it was so old that the screen would randomly go black. I had to work additional shifts at my part-time job to save enough money for a replacement. Sophia expressed wanting the latest iPhone, and they got it for her that weekend. "She needs it for her social media presence," my mother said, as if that justified everything. But the true difference was in how they handled our mistakes. I once forgot to take out the garbage after working all night on a project. My father lectured me for 45 minutes about responsibility and how I needed to grow up and contribute to the home. But what happened when Sophia backed into our mailbox before she even had her license? They laughed it off. "Oh, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning." It cost $300 to replace the mailbox. My grandfather was not like others. He was my light of hope in this sea of favoritism. While my parents were preoccupied with Sophia's latest social media follower count, Grandpa would sit with me in his study and review my architectural sketches. He wasn't very knowledgeable about modern design ideas, but he understood passion. "One day," he said, his eyes gleaming, "I'll see your buildings on postcards, and I'll buy every single one of them." As I grew older, I spent more time at my grandparents' house. It was the only location where I could breathe freely and not have my accomplishments eclipsed by whatever Sophia had done that day. Grandma would bake cookies while Grandpa worked on my college applications. They were the first to actually notice me. When I was 22 and working my first job at an architecture firm, Grandpa summoned me for a serious chat. He brought me down in his study, the same space where he'd fostered my goals for years, and informed me that he was launching a college fund for my graduate education. He was painfully honest. "I know your parents won't prioritize this, sweetie. They have their favorites, and it's not fair. But I want you to have your shot." The money was large, totaling $55,000. It was enough to give me a legitimate opportunity to pursue my master's degree without drowning in debt. When my parents found out, they barely responded. "What about Sophia? She had an amazing tantrum. Why doesn't Grandpa love me as much?" she cried. My parents spent hours comforting her, assuring her she was just as important and adored. Meanwhile, I stood in the corner, convinced that I couldn't have this one item without it becoming about her. Working for an architecture firm has been my escape. I've pushed myself into my tasks, working late at the workplace and taking on extra responsibilities. My colleagues value my effort and attention to detail. Last month, I was even able to present one of my ideas to a significant client. The firm's partners were impressed. But when I sought to share this information with my parents, "That's nice, honey, but did you hear about Sophia's TikTok going viral?" Then everything changed. My grandparents died within months of one another. First grandpa, then grandma, as if they couldn't take being apart. Losing them devastated me. They were my support system, my cheerleaders, and the only people who treated me like I was important. In the midst of my sadness, I had to manage the duties they had left behind. They were highly structured, with everything clearly spelled out in their will. They left me their humble home, filled with memories and love. Then there was the college fund, Grandpa's pride and delight. I had not touched it yet, thanks to my work savings. But as graduate school applications approached, I decided to check the account. Late one night, after a particularly hard day at work, I went in to check the balance. The numbers on the screen caused my heart to stop. Instead of $55,000, there was just $5,000 remaining. I blinked. We refreshed the page, logged out and back in. The number did not change. The next morning, I went to the bank in person, trying to remain calm while I inquired about the transaction history. That's when the truth was revealed. My parents, named as secondary beneficiaries, had been steadily depleting the account for the past year. I called my mother that evening, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone. "Hey, I was checking Grandpa's college fund, and most of the money's gone. Do you know what happened?" There was a long delay before she spoke, her tone immediately defensive. "What do you mean it's gone? Are you sure you're looking at the right account?" When I told her I'd been to the bank and knew the money had been withdrawn, she abandoned the act. "We used it for Sophia's Sweet 16, she explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. "You spent $50,000 on a birthday party?" "It wasn't just the party," she said, as if that made things better. "There were a lot of expenses, the venue, the catering, the decorations. Plus, we got her a car." Then came the kicker. They had also used the money to take Sophia on a 2-week family trip to Europe. I wasn't even told about the family vacation, let alone invited. When I explained that the money was intended for my education, my mother sighed, as if I was being difficult. "You didn't need that money anymore. You have a job, remember? Sweet 16 only happens once." We wanted to make it special for her. I hung up the phone with my entire body numb. That night, I sat in the living room of the house my grandparents had left for me, surrounded by images and memories. It seemed like a betrayal of all they had worked for and believed in. After days of internal deliberation, I came to a decision. I hired an attorney. This is not about money anymore. It's about respect. About advocating for myself. Regarding respecting my grandparents' desires. When my parents received the documents, all hell broke out. My mother called within hours, shouting about how I was ripping the family apart. "Do you know how this makes us look?" she insisted. My reply was straightforward. "You should have thought about that before stealing $50,000. "It wasn't stealing," she exclaimed. "It was for the family." I advised her to contact my lawyer and hung up. The fallout was immediate. My extended family found out, of course, my mother couldn't keep it a secret, and I became public enemy number one. My aunt called to lecture me on family loyalty. My aunt told me, "You need to think about what you're doing to your mother." But I'm done thinking about everybody else. For once in my life, I'm thinking about myself. My lawyer thinks this will not be a simple process, but I am ready. My grandparents believed in me. I believed in my dreams. I refuse to let their final gift to me be spent on a Sweet 16 celebration and a car Sophia has probably already wrecked. I will keep you updated as things progress. If anyone has dealt with toxic family dynamics like this, I'd love to learn how they addressed it. Sometimes I question whether I'm doing the right thing. But then I remember my grandfather's expression when he told me about the college fund, and how delighted he was to be able to help me pursue my aspirations. I will not let them take it away. Update 1. Hi, Reddit. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for your responses to my last post. Some of you really helped me realize that sticking up for myself wasn't just okay, it was important. Here's what's transpired in the 2 months since I filed legal action. The legal proceedings have been exhausting. My parents first tried to drag things out by ignoring our letters and missed deadlines. Their initial answer, through their lawyer, was almost comical. They stated that the money was a family resource and that Grandpa had vocally changed his mind before dying. When we inquired for documentation of this alleged amendment, they couldn't recall exactly when or where the conversation took place. During our first mediation session, my parents took a different approach. Dad stated they had invested the money in my future, claiming Sophia's social media presence would someday benefit the entire family. He genuinely said, with a straight face, "She's going to be an influencer, and then she can help pay for your education." The mediator's look was priceless. The real shock occurred when we uncovered more withdrawals that they had not communicated. In addition to the Sweet 16 celebration, the car, and the European holiday, they had spent thousands of dollars on a private dance instructor to help Sophia advance her career. They'd paid for a costly social media marketing course, many professional photo sessions for her Instagram, and a full gaming setup for her aspiring streaming career. My lawyer was ecstatic with these discoveries. Apparently, tracking such needless expenses strengthens our case. When confronted with these expenses, my mother attempted to justify them as investments in Sophia's future. She even brought spreadsheets to our next meeting, hoping to demonstrate how an influencer career could provide a significant family income. The judge was unimpressed, especially when my lawyer showed out that Sophia's social media following was primarily acquired through paid marketing. Using more of my college fund money. The family dynamic has shifted. Most families initially supported my parents. However, as more information became available, some people began to shift their perspective. My cousin Julia, 32F, called me privately and said she'd seen similar partiality at family gatherings for years but never had the nerve to speak up. She's now one of my most ardent advocates, willing to testify about particular occurrences she's witnessed over the years. My Aunt Margaret, who had first lectured me on family loyalty, became strangely silent after seeing the bank statements. Mom had brought them to a family meeting with the intention of getting approval for their side of the tale, but it backfired catastrophically. The statements included not only the significant expenses, but also dozens of minor withdrawals for things like social media consultancy and brand building seminars. Last week, Margaret sent me a quick text. "Your grandpa would be proud of you standing up for yourself." Coming from her, it meant everything. Sophia's behavior has undergone the most dramatic changes. When she realized her automobile could be seized as part of the settlement, she launched a massive social media campaign against me. Her heartfelt claims about her nasty sister and how I was wrecking the family out of envy backfired swiftly. Her followers began to question her perspective, especially after she moaned about possibly losing her European summer holiday plans. Many of them had part-time jobs to pay for their textbooks. Her most recent outburst occurred when she realized she might need to obtain a job. She posted a 20-minute diatribe on how unfair it was that she might have to work in retail or food service like any other person. The comment section rapidly turned against her, with many pointing out how out of touch she seemed. She's losing followers on a regular basis, and her attempts to present herself as the victim have just exacerbated the situation. The actual wake-up call for her came last week, when she received her college admission letter. Instead of the customary festivities, there was panic throughout the house. My parents committed to pay for her entire education, but they are currently suffering major financial difficulties. Their savings have been exhausted due to legal bills and a potential settlement. Sophia's dream school is suddenly less guaranteed, and for the first time, she is confronted with the implications of their collective decisions. Meanwhile, my career has become my haven. My firm's partners have been really helpful, particularly after I informed them that I may want some flexibility for court dates. One of them approached me and related her own story of family financial abuse. She has become something of a mentor to me, guiding me through both professional and personal obstacles. Last month, she even assigned me to oversee a key project, indicating that she believes in my talents despite my ongoing personal troubles. The most reassuring event occurred during a heated phone conversation with my folks last week. My mother began her typical guilt trip about family loyalty, but this time, I found my voice. When she started talking about how families should help each other, I politely asked her, "Where was this concern for your family when you spent my education fund on Instagram photo shoots and social media courses?" The line became silent. Then she hung up. An hour later, my father called back with an entirely different tone. For the first time, he seemed dejected. "Their lawyer phoned mine yesterday, saying we might be able to reach an agreement." The judge's first remarks regarding their breach of fiduciary duty appear to have finally struck home, particularly when he referenced potential punitive damages. My folks are beginning to understand that this will not go away with a few sad phone calls or guilt trips. The entire experience has been transformational. Standing up to them was daunting at first, but each small success has made me stronger. I am no longer the silent daughter who absorbs whatever attention they decide to offer me. I'm a professional lady battling for what is rightfully mine. And I'm winning. Not just in court, but in real life. Watching Sophia deal with real-world consequences has been eye-opening. She had to cancel her summer travel plans, and there is real talk that she will attend community college rather than her ideal university. She stopped writing about me on social media once her fans began to doubt her viewpoint. Some of her acquaintances have even contacted me personally, saying that my stance against family financial exploitation has helped them think about their own family problems. One of them even called me inspirational. Imagine the scapegoat daughter becoming an inspiration. The most recent development occurred when my parents attempted one more manipulation effort. They arrived at my office unannounced, believing they could press me in person. They didn't anticipate my entire squad to rally around me. My mentor stepped in, politely but firmly, ushering them out and telling them that any communication should go through our lawyers. It was fantastic to see their power over me dissolve in real time. I'll provide an update once we've reached an agreement or if anything significant changes. Thank you all for your encouragement and wisdom. Thank you to everyone who shared their own experiences with standing up to toxic family members. You helped me find my voice when I needed it the most. My grandfather used to say, sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. Update 2. After 6 months of intensive legal battles, I am finally able to reveal the outcome. For anyone curious about the outcome of the litigation, brace up, for karma has finally caught up with my family. The settlement negotiations were severe. My parents first claimed poverty, but their social media activities exposed them. Despite claiming financial distress, my mother continued to post about weekend spa getaways and fancy purchases. When my team submitted these posts to their lawyer during mediation, he visibly shuddered. Our forensic accountant made a surprising discovery, which marked a turning point. In addition to the expenses we already knew about, my parents had started depositing money into Sophia's social network investing account. They had recruited several influencer coaches and even put down a deposit on a content creation house, all using my college fund. The judge's response was noteworthy. This isn't investing in a child's future. This is gambling with someone else's inheritance. The final settlement exceeded our first expectations. My parents had to liquidate various assets, including their vacation timeshare and investment properties we had no idea existed. Sophia's car, the one they purchased with my money, had to be sold. What's with the irony? She had barely driven it and preferred to be ferried about by our parents. What about luxury shopping sprees and European vacations? Gone. She now works at a neighborhood coffee shop, which is her first actual job at the age of 18. The transformation has been astonishing. Initially, she returned home lamenting over having to wear a uniform and deal with tough customers. But something unexpected happened. She's genuinely maturing. She paid her first student loan payment last week and posted about it. There were no tears. There's no drama. Just a simple acknowledgement that she is learning to stand on her own 2 feet. My parents' changes have been even more dramatic. The illusion of a beautiful family life, which they had cultivated for years, has crumbled. My mother's social media accounts, which were formerly loaded with beautifully managed family images and uplifting words about unconditional love, have gone silent. Dad stopped making excuses for their actions and recently sent me an email, our first true conversation in months. In his email, he revealed something I never expected to hear. We failed you as parents. We got so caught up in making Sophia the star of our family that we forgot you were shining in your own way. He started having seen my name in an architectural magazine. I had recently won an award for an innovative ecological design project, and he stated he finally saw what my grandfather had always seen in me. My career provided the most rewarding growth opportunities. The sustainable design initiative that drew my father's interest has opened up great opportunities. 3 major corporations have approached me with job offers, and my current employer has reacted with a promotion and a significant raise. The partners even mentioned fast-tracking me for a junior partner position, which typically takes at least another 5 years. The compensation money has now arrived, and I have invested it just as my grandfather would have wished. I'll begin my master's degree in sustainable architecture next year, and I've set aside some money to establish a small scholarship for students in financial need. It feels good to transform this awful experience into something that can benefit others. Sophia and I had our first actual talk last week. She arrived at my house after her job at the coffee shop, still dressed in her uniform, looking fatigued but more sincere than I'd ever seen her. I get it now, she remarked. Why do you fight so hard? It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. We are not best friends, and perhaps we never will be. However, we have reached a new understanding. The most difficult thing has been witnessing my parents endure the community's censure. Their social circle has dwindled significantly since the truth was out. Several family friends have discreetly contacted me, relaying similar accounts of observing their favoritism over the years but never saying anything. My Aunt Margaret has unexpectedly become an ally, checking in on me on a regular basis and even assisting me with my graduate school application. Looking back, this journey was much more than just reclaiming stolen funds. It's been about breaking free from destructive familial patterns and discovering my own value. The house my grandparents left me has become my sanctuary, complete with architectural sketches and future ideas. I've converted their old study into my design studio, with my drafting table set up precisely where Grandpa used to sit and encourage my dreams. Sometimes, while I'm working late at night on my designs, I sense their presence and know they'd be proud of the lady I've become. The most significant difference has been in how I perceive myself. I am no longer the family's scapegoat or invisible daughter. I'm a successful architect, a potential graduate student, and someone who has the bravery to advocate for what is right. Last week, I presented a large sustainable housing project before the municipal council. Watching those seasoned architects and developers lean forward in their seats, truly interested in my ideas, was an experience that no amount of family approval could match. The familial dynamic that previously smothered me no longer has any hold on me. My folks are embarking on their own journey of atonement. Mom has started treatment, which she previously regarded as unnecessary. Her therapist assisted her in seeing tendencies from her own past that contributed to her bias. Dad is striving to re-establish relationships with family members who have distanced themselves owing to his enabling conduct. During our last family reunion, he actually stood up to his sister when she tried to make excuses for their previous actions. They have a long way to go, but at least they are admitting their mistakes. Sophia's transformation continues to amaze me. She's been promoted to shift supervisor at the coffee shop and is attending community college. Her social media presence now reflects a very different person, one who is discovering the importance of hard effort and genuine accomplishment. She's even created a small study club to help other working students reconcile work and education. Last week, she thanked me. "You taught me that real respect isn't about being given everything," she told me. "It's about earning your own way." The entitled youngster who used to throw tantrums over Instagram likes has matured into someone who recognizes the worth of actual achievement. To the Reddit community, your support has been vital throughout this trip. Every comment, letter, and shared story gave me the strength I needed when I was doubting myself. The reactions to my initial post made me realize how many other people have had similar issues with family financial abuse. You taught me that standing up for yourself does not make you selfish or ungrateful. Rather, it makes you powerful. Special thanks to everyone who shared their own experiences with family financial abuse and toxic dynamics. Your courage impressed me. When my grandfather established the college fund, he wanted to invest in my future. Ultimately, he offered me something far more significant than money. He taught me that I was worth fighting for. He showed me that dreams are more than simply wishful thinking. They are objectives that should be pursued with everything you have. That lesson has been worth every difficult moment on this path. For anyone out there dealing with similar family situations, remember, you deserve to be recognized, acknowledged, and your dreams taken seriously. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, even if they are family. Sometimes the most difficult battles are fought against people who should have been your staunch supporters. But those struggles shape who you are. The legal victory was only the beginning. I've begun helping other young architects at my business, particularly those dealing with financial or family issues. It feels natural to pass on the kind of support that my grandfather offered me. Next month, I'll be speaking at a professional conference on sustainable urban development, which I would never have done before. As I prepare to begin my master's program, I carry my grandfather's comments near to heart. One day, I'll see your buildings on postcards. I may have lost the money once, but I gained something far more valuable, the courage to shape my own destiny on my own terms. Every blueprint I draw, every design I develop, is a reflection of his faith in me. Thank you, Reddit, for being a part of my quest to reclaim what was properly mine. Not just money, but also my self-worth. Your intervention has transformed a story of familial betrayal into one of personal victory. I hope that my story can inspire others to have the strength to stand up for themselves and their aspirations. My sister-in-law's DNA test was meant to expose me, but it ended up destroying her own marriage instead. I met my husband James, in our late 20s, and we soon fell in love. We married after 2 years of dating and have lived a wonderful, tranquil life ever since. Our friendship looked unshakable, based on trust and shared dreams. We celebrated the birth of our beautiful baby, Nathan. Now 5 years old, he brightens our days with laughter, love, and boundless enthusiasm. We felt like the perfect little family, and I believe nothing could separate us. That is, until Sarah, my sister-in-law, decided to put a wrench in everything. Sarah and I had never really gotten along. We had an underlying tension since James introduced us. I attempted to be friendly, But Sarah clearly had other plans. She accused me of trying to overshadow her by wearing a cream-colored dress to her wedding. This wasn't even my option. Sarah had specified that all of her bridesmaids wear cream. However, on her special day, it became about me taking the show. She launched a temper tantrum, turning what should have been a happy moment into an embarrassing one for everyone. From that moment on, it was a never-ending game of sarcastic remarks, backhanded compliments, and petty behavior. If I put on a new dress, Sarah would comment, "That's nice, but I liked it better when I saw it in the store last year." If Nathan reached a milestone, she would try to belittle it by comparing him to her own son, Tommy. It was exhausting, but James and I always chose the high path. We did not want family conflict to spoil our lives. Furthermore, we wanted Nathan and Tommy to grow up together, like siblings. However, things took a nasty turn this Christmas when Sarah sought to stir the pot in unexpected ways. For Christmas, she gave Nathan one of those DNA testing kits that everyone seems to be using nowadays. At first, I didn't think much about it. Nathan has always been interested in science and enjoys knowing about his family history. But something about Sarah's smug expression as she handed him the equipment didn't sit well with me. I had the impression that this present was more than just what it appeared to be. Later that evening, James grabbed me aside, his expression concerned. He claimed Sarah had made some unusual, almost cryptic remarks about eventually obtaining answers and how the truth always comes out. A shiver went down my spine. It wasn't hard to figure out what was going on. Nathan has green eyes, whereas James and I have brown ones. Of course, anyone with a basic understanding of genetics is aware that recessive features, such as green eyes, can pass down through generations. But Sarah had been making subtle, passive-aggressive statements for years, implying that James might not be Nathan's father. Sarah's present was a deliberate attempt to sow doubt in our marriage, causing James to question Nathan's parentage. I was infuriated. How dare she use something as innocent as a child's curiosity to play petty games? But James and I wouldn't let her win. We knew the truth. Our love and trust for each other were strong, and we weren't going to let Sarah's poisonous actions disrupt that foundation. We agreed to allow Nathan to take the test if he wanted to, knowing that the findings would only confirm what we already knew. Nathan is our son, and no test could change that. Nathan, utterly oblivious of the tension building beneath the surface, was enthusiastic about the science behind the DNA test. He was excited to learn about his ancestors and where they came from. So we assisted him in the procedure, and he mailed off the gear. Meanwhile, Sarah's son, Tommy, had been watching everything develop with great curiosity. Tommy, a curious 14-year-old, opted to take a DNA test as well. Sarah's husband, Todd, felt it would be a fun family activity, so they also ordered a kit for him. What began as harmless curiosity quickly turned into a family nightmare. Nathan's findings arrived a few weeks later, and as expected, everything was correct. James was his father, without a doubt. Then came the shock of a lifetime. Tommy's results revealed that Todd was not Tommy's biological father. The reality hit hard. Sarah had an affair over a decade ago, and Tommy was not Todd's child. The discovery shattered the family like a wrecking ball. Todd was devastated. He had reared Tommy as his own, never thinking Sarah was unfaithful. To make matters worse, Todd sought a paternity test for their 7-year-old daughter. The results confirmed his greatest fears. He wasn't her father either. Sarah's entire life, the immaculate picture she had fought so hard to maintain, was disintegrating right in front of her eyes. And this wasn't a quiet, secret disintegration. The entire family was aware, and the consequences were negative. Todd filed for divorce and left their home within a few days. Sarah's world fell, and the once smug lady who had attempted to destroy my family now stood in the ruins of her own. The irony of the situation could not be ignored. Sarah's attempt to pull apart my marriage had simply exposed her own lies. Tommy was struck the hardest. He transitioned from a carefree, joyful youngster to a confused and heartbroken young adult. The man he had always called dad was not his father, and his family was disintegrating. Nathan, too, was impacted. He and Tommy had always been close, and watching his cousin go through such upheaval made him sad and scared. He began questioning why Tommy's father was no longer around, and it hurt my heart to watch him so concerned about his cousin. Sarah's life became increasingly chaotic as time went. Todd pressed for full custody of their children, seeking to limit Sarah's role in their lives. Sarah, who had always been the glue that held the family together with her domineering personality, now appeared to be a shell of her former self. At family gatherings, she was a nervous wreck, her face pale and her eyes red from sobbing. The woman who had before attempted to make my life miserable now appeared completely defeated. Then, one day, something unexpected occurred. Sarah reached out to me. She called me, her voice unsteady and teary, pleading for assistance. She wanted me to talk to Todd and persuade him to lighten off on the custody agreement. She was anxious to salvage what little she had left of her relationship with her children, and she was seeking assistance from me. At first, I was stunned. After everything she had done to undermine my marriage and cause havoc at every opportunity, she had the arrogance to ask for my assistance. I initially ignored her calls, refusing to consider aiding her. But as the days passed, I found myself wondering about Tommy. He was the true victim in all of this. Despite the fact that none of this was his fault, he bore the brunt of it. Nathan, too, was trying to figure out why his cousin's life had been turned upside down. I started feeling conflicted. Was it appropriate to hold Sarah's conduct against her children? Should I put my rage aside and help for the benefit of the kids? James, of course, warned me to keep out of it. He insisted Sarah had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. But I couldn't ignore the idea that I might be able to assist bring some serenity to the children involved. It was not their fault that their mother made poor decisions. So I found myself at a crossroads, unsure what to do. Should I assist Sarah, or should I let her face the consequences of her own actions? And now here I am, caught between doing what is right for the children and staying away from the woman who caused so much misery. What would you do if you were in my position? Update 1. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking time to read my story. I did not expect such a large response, and your help has meant a lot to me during this tough time. It's been really difficult to navigate the emotional roller coaster I'm now experiencing, but knowing that there are others out there who understand and care has been quite beneficial. I wanted to provide an update on what has occurred since my previous post, and I hope it puts some light on the complex situation we are dealing with. Sarah is still contacting me regularly, and to be honest, it's getting tiring. I expected her to back off or cool down, but she hasn't. She is relentless. On one especially horrible day, she called me 3 times in a row, leaving lengthy, sobbing voicemails. I could sense the desperation in her voice, but after everything, it was difficult to feel sympathy. At one point, my husband James became so frustrated that he couldn't take it anymore. He called her himself. James rarely loses his cool, so when he phoned her, I knew he was serious. I could hear his wrath from across the room. He exploded, telling her he was fed up with her disrespecting me and attempting to manipulate our family. He made it apparent that this was more than simply a DNA test. It was about years of snarky remarks, manipulation, and her blatant disrespect for limits. Sarah did not take it well. She burst into tears on the phone, telling James that I had poisoned his mind against her, that I was the one who was keeping him away from his family. Hearing her sob like that made me conflicted. I felt a glimmer of sympathy, but basically, I was tired. After that chat, things became worse. Sarah's tone changed again. She began contacting me regularly, alternating between asking for help and accusing me of attempting to ruin her life. She was pleading for my aid at one point, claiming she wanted me to talk to Todd and help things go well. The next thing I knew, she was calling me manipulative, alleging I was jealous of her and her family, and that I wanted to end her marriage. It was as if she wasn't sure if I was her enemy or her rescuer. Honestly, coping with her emotional outbursts has been draining. I feel like I'm locked on a roller coaster that I didn't sign up for. Throughout all, my main focus has been the children. They are innocent in all of this, but they are the ones suffering the most. I can't quit thinking about Tommy and Nathan. Tommy's discovery about his biological father must have been traumatic for him, and it's evident that he's having difficulty processing it. It's difficult for me to see him suffer through this without being able to help. Nathan, on the other hand, isn't really sure what's going on, but he senses something wrong. We attended a family gathering a few days ago, and Nathan wanted to play with Tommy like they used to do. They used to be really close, almost inseparable. But when Tommy came over, I noticed an immediate shift in him. He was distant, reserved, and rarely engaged with Nathan. My heart bled as I saw the two boys, who had previously been like brothers, drift apart. Nathan continued asking why Tommy wasn't laughing or playing like he used to, but I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. Instead, I made up reasons, telling him Tommy was simply sleepy or had a lot on his mind. But I knew it was more than that. Meanwhile, Sarah keeps sending me lengthy, dramatic texts. She wrote me a note yesterday, claiming she felt betrayed by our family. I really wanted to yell. How could she feel betrayed? She was the one who made these decisions. She was the one who caused the situation. And yet, she refuses to accept responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. Mine, James's, Todd's, never hers. James and I have had numerous late-night discussions on how to approach this. We both want to do what is best for the children, but we don't know what that is anymore. James says we should intervene and try to help Tommy, especially because he and Nathan are close. However, he is also concerned about the ramifications of being too involved in Sarah's situation. We've been trying to strike a balance between being supportive of the kids and maintaining our personal peace, but it's been more difficult than we expected. Todd has begun to contact James, further complicating matters. He's been trying to make sense of things and wants to discuss the problem. James hesitantly agreed to join him for coffee. When he returned, he appeared more conflicted than ever. Todd is naturally devastated. He told James that he believes his entire life has been a lie, and that he is now struggling to figure out how to co-parent with Sarah in light of everything that has occurred. Talking with Todd simply made James feel more torn. Todd is a kind guy who is only trying to do the best he can for his children despite the nightmare he has found himself in. After hearing Todd's side of the story, James is even more divided about how to proceed. He wants to help, but we both know that being too involved will drag us deeper into Sarah's drama. It's difficult to know what the appropriate thing to do. Every time I see Tommy, I have an intense want to help him. He's just a child caught up in this calamity, and he doesn't deserve any of it. Nathan continues asking why Tommy appears so sad all the time, and it aches my heart that I can't give him an honest reason. The more I think about it, the more split I am. Between wanting to intervene and being terrified of being drawn into Sarah's tumultuous world. At the end of the day, all I want to do is safeguard the children. Tommy and Nathan deserve more, and it's sad to see them suffer as a result of their parents' sins. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this without causing further harm. I'll keep you posted on what happens next, and once again, thank you for your continuing support. Update 2. Hello folks. A lot has transpired in the last few days, so buckle up. It's been a lot for all of us, and I'm not sure how much longer this will continue. But this is where we are now. First and foremost, Sarah chose to proceed with an official medical paternity test. She was dissatisfied with the results of the at-home DNA kit, arguing it was not a reputable source for making such an important decision. To be fair, the at-home tests include a margin of error, and I'm guessing she was hanging on to whatever hope she had left. But, guess what? The findings did not change. The medical paternity test confirmed what the first one had revealed. Todd is not the father of Tommy or their daughter. Sarah just created a deeper hole for herself. I was not surprised by the conclusion, but there was no space for uncertainty. Todd, in particular, appeared to be preparing for the worst-case scenario. But when the medical test results came back, I could tell it still wounded him terribly. He appeared shattered, as if the last shred of hope he clung to had been taken away. He had previously told James that he did not expect a miracle, but there was always a glimmer of hope that the test had been incorrect. Seeing the confirmation in black and white felt like the last nail in the coffin. Todd grew even more withdrawn after receiving the news. I saw it coming, but I wasn't expecting what occurred next. Todd apparently did some research after receiving the results and tracked out the man with whom he suspected Sarah was having an affair. Todd told James that this guy was Sarah's coworker from more than a decade ago. Todd had misgivings about their connection for a long time, but Sarah always dismissed them as work issues. Todd now understood what was going on. He recalled Sarah and this man being extremely close, attending work parties together and messaging late into the night. She was always making excuses to Todd, convincing him that everything was fine. However, it appeared that all of those suspicions were coming true. Todd decided to confront the person. He traced him down to his home and went there without informing anyone. Todd wasn't in a good mood, as far as I could tell. He was hurt, angry, and desperate for an answer. Things moved swiftly. Todd wasn't having it, even if the guy initially disputed everything. It immediately escalated into a yelling confrontation, and it wasn't long before things became physical. Neighbors heard the disturbance and phoned the police. By the time the cops arrived, Todd and the other man had been beaten badly. Todd was arrested for assault, and he now faces prosecution. It's a mess. James had to go down to the police station to help Todd. He bailed him out, but Todd now faces major legal consequences. He's claiming that the fight was provoked, but it will be difficult to prove in court. The whole thing is spiraling out of control, and I can't help but wonder if it's all because Sarah chose to hide the truth for so long. Todd is disintegrating, and it's awful to see someone who was always so composed fall apart. Meanwhile, Sarah has been scrambling to contain the damage, but it's much too late. Todd has now filed for full custody of the children, citing the affair, paternity testing, and fight as proof that Sarah is an unsuitable mother. Sarah is in a panic. She's trying to persuade everyone that Todd is the problem, labeling him a psychomaniac and citing the fight as proof that he's unstable and dangerous. She's frightened that Todd will take the kids away from her, so she's lashing out at everybody who disagrees with her. The tension between Sarah and Todd is growing by the day. Todd is furious with her for years of deceit, and Sarah is anxious to keep some control over her life, which is disintegrating around her. I can see the toll it's having on both of them, but I'm most concerned about Tommy and their daughter. Todd has been talking about moving out of state with the kids to put some distance between them and Sarah. He believes that the children deserve a fresh start away from the tumult. But I am not sure. I appreciate his desire to protect kids, but removing them from everything they've known could be more harmful than beneficial. And legally, it will be a difficult battle. Sarah, as always, is in complete meltdown mode. She's been contacting me constantly, alternating between pleading for my assistance and accusing me of turning James against her. Dealing with her mood swings is extremely demanding. One minute, she's pleading for help, claiming she's been wronged. The next moment, she's shouting about how James and I are involved in some vast conspiracy against her. I wish I didn't feel sympathy for her, but a part of me does. She is certainly spinning. But, at the same time, I can't deny that she brought it all on herself. It's difficult to watch someone self-destruct, especially when they refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. When I last saw Sarah, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she kept saying how everything was falling apart, and how Todd was attempting to take her children away. She denies that her own actions are to blame for this situation. She still perceives herself as the victim in all of this, which makes it difficult to communicate with her. She's attempting to transfer all of the blame to Todd, but anyone who has been paying attention can see that the situation is far more complicated than that. At this point, I don't believe we have any choice except to get engaged. We are already knee-deep in this mess, whether we like it or not. James believes we should help Todd deal with the legal troubles he is experiencing, especially since Todd appears to be the more stable father in this situation. But I'm concerned about how this is affecting the children. They're caught in the middle of a conflict they didn't ask for, and I'm frightened that they'll be the ones who suffer the most in the end. Tommy, especially, appears to be struggling. He's always been a sensitive child, but I've observed a shift in him since all of this began. He's quieter, more withdrawn, and clearly perplexed about what's going on. I can't imagine how it must feel to learn that the man you've always called dad isn't your own father. Nathan has asked me several times why Tommy doesn't want to play as much anymore, and each time it crushes my heart. I'm not sure how to explain it to him in a way that he will understand. The situation is spiraling out of control, and I have no idea how it will end. Every time I think it can't be any worse, something new happens, dragging us all deeper into the insanity. We're simply trying to take things one day at a time and hope for the best. But it's difficult to be hopeful when the future appears so uncertain. I'll keep you all posted as things go, but for the time being, we're simply holding on and hoping for a resolution that won't absolutely destroy these kids' lives. Update 3. Hello, everyone, it is time for the final update. A lot has transpired since my last post, and I believe things are finally starting to settle. We're not totally out of the woods yet, despite the roller coaster ride we've had. But it appears that the worst is behind us. I've been contemplating everything, and I wanted to express how things have progressed. First, let us discuss Todd and the man Sarah had an affair with. You're all aware that Todd was detained after the confrontation became physical. What I didn't mention earlier is that the issue worsened even further. Initially, we believed Todd would face substantial charges for the incident. However, in an unexpected change of events, the guy chose not to press charges. Todd told us that this man wants to disassociate himself from the whole affair. He was probably aware that his engagement may make matters worse for him, both personally and professionally. While he admitted to the affair when the police arrived, he has now severed relations with both Todd and Sarah. In some ways, that chapter of the story has come to an end, and to be honest, I believe it is for the better. Todd does not need to continue battling with someone who clearly has no regard for the consequences of his actions. Now, the bit regarding the kids has been the most emotionally draining for everyone. Todd had initially applied for full custody of Tommy and his younger sister, which understandably caused Sarah to panic. Todd, however, had a breakthrough following some difficult meetings with his lawyer and some profound thought. He recognized that no matter what the paternity test showed, Tommy and his sister were still his children. He has been their father since birth, nurturing, loving, and guiding them. That relationship cannot be severed with a DNA test. Todd informed James and me that he is no longer fighting for custody out of anger or vengeance. Instead, he is doing it to protect the children from the upheaval Sarah has caused. He is desperate to protect them from the consequences of her conduct, and he has been absolutely amazing throughout. It's evident how much he adores those children, and that has been his primary emphasis in everything. He has made it a point to remind them that whatever happens between him and Sarah, they will always be his children. He loves them unconditionally and isn't going away. Todd's handling of the chat with the children was exceptional. He sat them down and described the problem in an age-appropriate manner, not giving them too much information, but just enough to understand why things were changing. He told them that they had done nothing wrong and that this was not their fault. Tommy, in particular, has struggled to digest everything. I believe Todd's assurance that he is still Tommy's father, no matter what, helped to alleviate some of his bewilderment and anguish. Tommy is still struggling, but he isn't as lost as previously. Sarah, on the other hand, has been an absolute wreck. She's still in full panic mode, urgently attempting to save her relationship with the children. But she's not doing it the right way. Instead of focusing on their emotional needs, she has been preoccupied with her own issues, such as managing her public image and cleaning up the mess she caused. Meanwhile, Todd has been attending their school events, driving them to doctor's appointments, and ensuring their well-being. It's terrible to see, but Sarah seems more concerned with how things appear on the outside than what's going on inside her family. The custody battle is still underway, but Todd has shifted his strategy. He is now advocating for shared custody rather than full custody, recognizing that the children still need their mother in their life, despite everything. Todd is attempting to be the bigger person here, acknowledging that, as damaging as Sarah's actions have been, the children should not lose their relationship with her entirely. Nonetheless, Todd continues to advocate for primary custody because he has been the more stable father throughout. He wants to provide the children a sense of stability and normalcy, which they have been missing for a long time. Based on what we've heard, the court appears to be siding with Todd. He has proved that he is the one who provides stability for the children, and his love for them is obvious. Unfortunately, Sarah is not helping her own cause. She's still making everything about her, portraying herself as the victim and citing Todd's previous outburst as proof that he's unfit. But everyone involved understands Todd's outburst was motivated by hurt, and he's been doing everything he can to move on in a healthy way. Sarah and Todd's marriage is over. The divorce is underway, and there is no going back. Todd is now at peace with this. He's told James and me that he's no longer furious at Sarah, just sad. It's sad to think about what could have been. I'm sorry their relationship ended the way it did. It is unfortunate that it has had such an influence on the children. But he is also focused on going forward. Todd's top priority right now is his children, and he's doing everything he can to be the best father possible. James and I are doing well despite all of this. It's been difficult to see everything unfold, but we've tried to be supportive without becoming overly involved in the drama. Nathan and Tommy remain as close as ever, and we've been making sure the boys spend time together to assist Tommy cope. I think it's been beneficial for both of them to have that connection, especially because everything else feels so unstable. One thing I've learned from all of this is how resilient children can be when surrounded by love. Despite the tumult, Todd's love for his children has served as a stabilizing force, keeping them on track. We've all tried to help, but in the end, Todd's strength and determination will see them through this. I'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone for their tremendous support. I never dreamed that a DNA test would change my life so dramatically, but here we are. Your wisdom, good words, and support have helped me more than I can express. Navigating this scenario has been difficult at times, but knowing that there are others who care and understand has made all the difference. I'm hoping that this will be the final significant update I need to provide. Things are still in motion, but I am hopeful that the worst is behind us. The kids are still surrounded by affection, which is ultimately what matters. Thank you again for staying with me on this trip. Let's hope the next chapter is one of healing and harmony. My parents funded my sister's lavish wedding, then handed me the bill. They never expected what I'd do next. I, 32M, was my parents' first kid. They own a healthcare firm and were both highly involved, so I was effectively parentless throughout my youth. I had few intimate moments with them and was always in the care of my nannies. My parents, still in their prime, opted not to bear the responsibility of parenting. They lived a luxury lifestyle, frequently spending over their means, but because they each had sizable inheritances as a safety net, they always landed securely, despite their spendthrift tendencies. My parents had a daughter, Emma, 8 years after my birth. With Emma's arrival, I realized that their neglect of me was not due to their busy lifestyle, but because they just did not like me enough to spend time with me. Over the years, I discovered numerous causes for this treatment. I was a normal-looking child with average intelligence, an introvert who only spoke when spoken to. Emma, on the other hand, was just what my parents needed to position themselves as a perfect family, in their professional circles. She was a stunning baby with blue eyes and curly golden hair. She had inherited my parents' greatest qualities, and even as a youngster, she could fascinate a small crowd with her antics. Her presence solidified the perfect family picture that my parents desired to project. Emma had special treatment, but this did not imply that I had a difficult existence. I was fortunate enough to attend an expensive private school and then a prestigious university. However, the male treatment I experienced throughout my upbringing taught me the value of working hard and earning respect. I worked tirelessly in school and university to earn a well-paying position. Once I secured a job, I worked hard to go up the professional ladder as rapidly as possible. Despite maintaining communication with my parents, the wounds of childhood maltreatment never healed. Emma, as the golden child, was never expected by our parents to work hard. She was an ordinary student to begin with, and because our parents indulged her, she constantly failed her studies. She dropped out of high school, but our parents continued to employ her at their business. Even yet, she was absent most days, and when she did show up, she stayed for only a few hours. She had disagreements with all of her coworkers, and they loathed her presence in the office. Friends and family frequently told me about Emma's temper tantrums and the drama that ensued. However, it devastated my heart how my parents kept this from me. During a visit to my parents after I had established my career, I expected to have a serious conversation with Emma on their behalf. I believed a family intervention would benefit her professional life. When I arrived, Emma was nowhere to be found, and my parents made me feel foolish by stating she ran half of their firm. I could tell my parents were gently comparing my accomplishments to Emma's. That's when it hit me. My parents saw me as the child that grew up without their meddling, whereas Emma was the one they reared with their guidance. It would have been a shame for my parents if I had achieved more in life than Emma. At 19, I was already succeeding in university, whilst my sister, who was the same age, was out partying. Nothing changed throughout the years. Emma remained to live with our parents while I grew in my job. My relationship with Emma deteriorated during these years, for reasons I did not fully understand. As her older brother, I attempted to comprehend what she was going through. Everyone except our parents contrasted her life to mine. She was continually told to follow in my footsteps and achieve success, but that was not her goal. These parallels compelled our parents to overcompensate by giving her undeserved advancements in their company and giving in to all of her demands. My sister was growing up without the ability to accept responsibility for anything, which concerned me. However, I had no role in her life to intervene and advise her. My parents had already kicked me out of their lives since I outshone Emma at parties and family gatherings. Emma preferred it this way, so I established my own social group in the city where I lived. 2 years ago, I met my wife, Danielle. Danielle worked in the fashion sector, something I never envisioned myself being involved with. I had the worst fashion sense, and I still don't understand how a woman with such refined taste in fashion fell in love with me. Her presence in my life enhanced how I portrayed myself, improving my confidence. Strangely, the emptiness left by my parents, which had persisted since my early youth, has finally been filled. Danielle's presence in my life allowed me to discover aspects of my personality that I was previously unaware of. So it's not an exaggeration to state that she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. After a year of dating, Danielle and I decided to marry. Because we both had a limited circle of close friends and family, we chose to have a lavish ceremony. We planned a destination wedding and, after much study, debate, and discussion, chose Venice as our site. I won't go into detail about the wedding, but we paid for all of our invited guests' travel fees and hosted them in the best possible hotels. Most of our guests had never experienced a ceremony like this before. Emma urged me to purchase a ticket for her boyfriend as well, which I joyfully agreed to, despite Danielle's advice to hesitate. Throughout the wedding, I detected jealousy in Emma's eyes. She was frequently consoled by our mother. My parents were in awe of the wedding I had planned, but they kept their joy to themselves. Even before the wedding, my family had ignored my attempts to arrange a family dinner with Danielle. They maintained this conduct even after the wedding. After a while, I gave up trying. Around the same time, I realized that my parents were bad-mouthing me to those around them. They informed others that I had taken their money to finish my studies and find a career, just to abandon them in their old age. My father even stated that he would not leave me a dime of his fortune. My aunt on my father's side, who has always supported me, was nice enough to warn me about what was going on at home. It would be a lie to claim that it did not hurt me. Losing a family member is a difficult experience, and Danielle helped me get through it. I learned a few months back that my sister was arranging her wedding. My aunt told me that Emma was blown away by my wedding and wanted something similar for herself. She even convinced her fiancé to propose to her and began organizing a lavish wedding in Tuscany. However, neither she nor her lover had any money. So she approached our parents and requested them to pay for her wedding. To no one's surprise, they cheerfully approved her request. However, they could not afford a wedding in Tuscany. So they requested her to change the location to Hawaii. After considerable opposition, my sister gave in and planned an elaborate wedding there. Throughout the preparation process, neither my parents nor my sister wanted to involve me in any way. I even met them once during this time, but they kept quiet about the wedding plans. So I accepted the fact that I wouldn't be invited to my sister's wedding. My parents surprised me a few weeks ago when they invited Danielle and me to supper at their house. This was the first time they had asked Danielle around, so my unsophisticated mind assumed this was the first step toward repairing my connection with them. The dinner was good, but afterward, my folks dropped a bombshell. They informed me that they had incurred significant business losses and that an anticipated litigation loomed over their heads like the sword of Damocles. They could no longer afford my sister's wedding. They also couldn't let their golden child down. So they invited me over to see if I could help fund the expense of her wedding. The dinner was not an attempt to reconcile our differences. Rather, it was an opportunity for them to utilize me to make their favorite child happy. I was enraged on the inside, but without asking Danielle, I accepted their offer. However, I had two conditions. First and foremost, I wanted complete control over the wedding style. Second, I wanted to give a speech at the wedding. They were startled because I wasn't normally the one to offer speeches. They didn't care as long as I helped them maintain the prestige of their favored child. Emma's wedding was far more crowded than my own. In addition to her acquaintances, family members from both sides of our parents' families were invited. This was an excellent opportunity to express myself, which is why I insisted on giving a speech. The wedding day eventually arrived, and I could tell Emma was unsatisfied with the arrangements I had made. We had extremely different interests, and I knew that whatever I selected, she would find a way to perceive it as a bad decision. But I was there for one reason: to deliver my speech. When the time came, I asked Danielle to videotape it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "I want to take a moment to thank my parents for giving me the opportunity to speak today." My parents exchanged confused looks. They had expected me to speak about Emma, not them. "You see, for years, my parents have ignored me," I went on. "They never supported me or treated me with the same love and affection that they did my sister. But now that they need anything from me, they creep back." As my remarks took effect, the room fell silent. My parents looked uncomfortable, and Emma appeared to be about to cry. "But I'm not bitter," I added, smiling. "In fact, I am grateful. You see, this wedding has given me the opportunity to demonstrate to my parents my success and accomplishments, and I must admit, it feels quite wonderful." I went on to give a speech about how my parents treated me differently and how, despite all of my successes and accomplishments, it still hurts me. My parents sat quietly, their faces flushed with embarrassment. As I finished my speech, I approached my sister and hugged her. "I'm so happy for you," I said truly. "I hope you have a wonderful life with your husband." And with that, I left the reception with my wife, leaving my parents and sister behind. I drove back to my hotel room and sat here, satisfied. My parents have always portrayed themselves as the ideal parents, and this is a significant part of their reputation in our town. I'm glad I finally had the chance to tell everyone how I was genuinely handled. However, I feel a little awful about doing it during my sister's wedding. Am I the a-hole for destroying my sister's wedding day by giving a speech on my parents' carelessness since childhood? Update 1. Emma entered my room shortly before midnight and hugged me tightly. She was crying, and I sobbed with her. Danielle moved out of the room to provide us some solitude. Emma told me she had never heard my side of the tale. She had always assumed that I remained aloof from my family because I desired to be. Our parents had made sarcastic remarks about me to her since she was a child, creating a terrible image of me in her mind. I apologize for ruining her wedding day. To my amazement, she was incredibly understanding, even saying that our parents deserved it. This is the most heartfelt talk I've had with my sister since she was born. Update 2. 1 week has passed. I had not met my father or mother before leaving Hawaii, but my mother called me today. She informed me that Emma had ceased speaking to my father. My speech made a significant impression on her, but my father viewed it confrontational and disrespectful. He chose to cut all relations with me. Emma ceased talking to him after she discovered the truth. My mother begged me to act in some way because the situation was causing her distress. Update 3. Yesterday I did something inconceivable. I invited all of the family members to supper and let them discuss their differences. After feeling orphaned and lost for the previous 32 years, I suddenly feel like I'm leading a family. During supper, I discussed my differences with my dad. Though he was too stubborn to accept his shortcomings, I knew he recognized that he had not been a good parent to me. My mother apologized for not being present for me as a mother. I did not turn out badly, so there was no reason not to forgive her. By the end of the evening, I had ensured that the conflicts between my sister and my father were settled. It is odd to be involved in family matters, but my only concern is whether this will continue or not. Comment. Ash, your family is a bunch of rich a-holes who have been making money for generations and have no idea what to do with it. What's wrong with being raised by nannies when kids are abandoned on the streets? You were loved and cared for as a youngster, which is why you grew up to be successful and can now afford 2 expensive weddings consecutively. NTA, but you might have done this sooner rather than being a doormat for so many years, hoping your family would learn from their mistakes and begin loving you properly. You should also learn to communicate more effectively rather than waiting until the last minute to explode. I suspected my wife was planning a divorce, so I moved my assets. 2 weeks later, she filed, then backtracked when her plan backfired. Hello everyone, before we start today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. Hello people. I've been skimming through the posts here for a while, believing I'd never have my own tale to tell. However, life has a way of shocking you, and I've been lugging this about for months. I need to let it out. Let me be clear, I've never been the sort to jump to conclusions or assume the worst. My wife, let's call her M, and I have been together for 6 years and married for 4. Things were solid, or so I thought. We experienced the typical ups and downs, but nothing that made me think, oh, there's a problem here. In reality, throughout the majority of our relationship, we were that couple, completely committed colleagues. We laughed at stupid inside jokes, argued for hours about which movie to watch, and had a cadence that just worked. She'd organize elaborate date nights, and I'd treat her to her favorite takeout after a long day. It felt effortless. As if we had figured out the whole love thing. That is why what occurred next struck me like a ton of bricks. The shift around 6 months ago, things began to alter. At first, it was minor details. Things you'd likely miss if you weren't paying attention. She began carrying her phone everywhere, even when she was only going to the kitchen or folding clothes. Before this, her phone would sit on the coffee table for hours, and she didn't mind who picked it up. One day I made this joke. "What, are you running some secret spy ring now?" She chuckled and added, "No, work's been emailing me a lot." Okay, fine. But, a few days later, she created a password. That one caught me off surprise because she had never used it before. When I casually inquired why, she responded something vague about security and hackers. I didn't press it since I didn't want to appear paranoid, but it simply felt off. And it did not end there. She began taking calls outside the room, which she had never done before. It wasn't subtle either. Her phone would ring, and she'd say, "Oh, let me just grab this real quick," before disappearing into the bedroom or outside on the porch. If I inquired who it was, she would just say, "Just a friend from work." Then I noticed a new habit. Keeping her phone face down on the table. I had no idea that was a thing until I reached over to give her something and she hastily moved her phone out of the way. It was one of those blink and you miss it moments, yet it stayed with me. Growing distance. However, it wasn't all about the phone. She started to feel distant. Conversations that used to flow easily now felt like pulling teeth. If I brought up future plans, such as where should we go for our anniversary? Or, do you think we should start saving for a new car? She'd simply nod and say, "Yeah, we'll see," before shifting the subject. It all came together for me on a random Wednesday. She informed me that she was seeing a buddy for coffee after work. It didn't sound strange, she does that occasionally. I happened to be running errands in the same area, so I figured, why not surprise her? It will be cute. When I arrived, however, she was not with her friend. She stood outside the cafe, walking back and forth, her phone placed against her ear. I remained in my car because something about the way she spoke seemed serious. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but I overheard phrases like, "It's almost ready," and "starting fresh soon." My stomach sank. I couldn't figure out what she was saying, but it didn't sound like job or friend conflict. It sounded grander, like something she had planned. When she returned home, I asked her how her coffee date went, attempting to maintain a casual tone. She told me a complete narrative about her pal complaining about her boyfriend. It was such an unexpected comment that I just gazed at her for a second. "What do you mean?" I inquired. She shrugged. "I just think we should have everything in one place. You know, like all our account info, passwords, documents, that kind of thing, just in case of emergency." I wasn't sure what to say. This was something we'd never discussed before, and the timing seemed strange given everything else I'd noticed. What kind of emergencies? I inquired, attempting to keep my tone casual. She shrugged again. It's just smart, isn't it? What if something happens to one of us? Or what if we need to make a big financial decision quickly? Her argument made sense on the surface, but something about the way she expressed it made me nervous. It was too rehearsed and polished, as if she had been waiting for the appropriate time to bring it up. I nodded and murmured something like, "Yeah, I guess that's a good idea," but within, alarms were ringing. Why now? Why are we suddenly concerned about arranging our finances when we've always kept them separate and loose? That night, my mind kept reliving her words, attempting to figure out what it meant. Was this just typical adult behavior, and was I reading too much into it? But then I remembered the phone calls, the talk I overheard in the cafe, and how distant she'd been recently. It all began to mount up, and I did not like the image it was painting. Until then, I had done nothing about it. A few days later, she mentioned it again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich, and she was looking through her phone, when she remarked, "Have you thought more about organizing the bank stuff? Like, do you know where all the account details are?" I lowered the knife and turned to face her. "Okay, what's going on?" I inquired, attempting to keep my tone light but firm. "You've been bringing up the finances a lot lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" She finally looked up from her phone, astonished that I had pressed her on it. "No, nothing's wrong," she responded hastily, making me giggle. "I just think it's important, that's all, for emergencies." "Emergencies? Like what?" She shrugged, her expression unreadable. "I don't know. Just life stuff. It's not a big deal. I promise, I just think it's something we should get on top of." Her response seemed ambiguous. Too vague. I nodded and let it go, but the way she avoided providing a direct answer made me even more suspicious. It didn't seem like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was concealing something, but I had no idea what it was. So, the next day, while she was at work, I decided to look into our finances. I opened our joint account online and discovered something unexpected. Over the last month, a few tiny moves had taken place. Nothing large, but small quantities that did not appear to have a clear purpose. They were not designated for bills, groceries, or anything similar. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it appeared that she had been withdrawing money from the account for some reason, which I couldn't figure out. I considered addressing her, but something told me to wait. If I was wrong, I'd look ridiculous. And if I was correct, I had to be careful. It was eating at me, so I contacted someone I trusted, an old college friend who also happens to be a lawyer. I told him what I'd discovered while trying not to sound like a conspiracy theorist. "Look," he remarked after I'd explained everything. "I'm not saying something is absolutely going on, but you're not insane for wanting to be ready. If you're concerned about protecting your assets, now is the moment to do so. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through what I could do, simple procedures to ensure my finances were protected if something happened. I'll admit that taking such drastic action felt out of the ordinary. It felt like I was preparing for something dreadful even though I wasn't sure what was wrong. But the more I considered it, the more it made sense. If she was really up to something, and I was beginning to suspect she was, I needed to defend myself. It was not an easy decision to make, however. This wasn't just about money or assets. It was about the life we had created together. I kept repeating images in my head, our wedding day, the late-night conversations about our dreams, and the weird little jokes we shared. How did we arrive here? Is this what our marriage had come to? The prospect of taking these measures felt like conceding defeat, as if I was officially abandoning the trust we previously shared. That evening, while she was out, I sat at my desk and took out my laptop. My hand shook as I opened the computer and began browsing through everything: bank accounts, investment accounts, and the property deed. Each paper I studied felt like a betrayal, but a persistent voice in my head reminded me that this was about survival, not sabotage. I didn't mean to hurt her. I couldn't get rid of the idea that if I didn't act now, I'd regret it later. I compiled a list of everything I could transfer and how to do it without raising suspicion. As I typed, I felt a crushing weight settle against my chest. I had entirely trusted her for years, and now here I was, playing defense against the person I thought would always have my back. Then I called my mother and explained why I needed her help, but not in detail. "I need you to hold on to some things for me for a while. It's nothing bad, just something I need to do to protect myself, just in case." She was silent for a minute, likely trying to figure out what I wasn't saying. "Are you okay?" Her voice was filled with anxiety. "Yeah," I lied. It's just a precaution. Nothing to worry about. She didn't press me, but I could hear the pause in her voice when she responded. Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need. I hung up the phone with an odd mix of relief and shame. I despised engaging her in this mess, but knowing she had my back provided some steadiness in an otherwise chaotic environment. By the time Em arrived home, I had already begun the process. I moved the majority of my assets, our cash, investments, and even the house, to my mother's name. I kept enough in our joint account to keep up appearances, but the rest was locked down. She didn't notice anything. She walked in, kissed my cheek, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I appeared okay, but inside I was a wreck. Part of me felt awful, as if I had betrayed her trust. But another part of me felt relieved, as if I was finally gaining control of a situation that had spiraled out of my control. Over the next 3 days, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I didn't want to let her know that anything had changed. She appeared satisfied, even unusually cheery at times. However, rather than putting me at ease, it increased my suspicion. If she was plotting something, she did an excellent job of concealing it. What stood out, however, was that she never brought up the finances again, not even after I questioned her the last time. It was as if the subject had evaporated from her memory. At first, I believed I had overreacted, and she dismissed the subject since it wasn't relevant. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she was avoiding it. Almost as if she was afraid to bring it up again after I pressed her. I noticed her staring at me a few times, as if she was assessing my mood or contemplating whether to say something. Every time I noticed, she'd quickly return her attention to whatever she was doing, her phone, the TV, a book. It was slight, but it was present. It felt like she was waiting for me to bring it up, as if she didn't want to push the issue again. The silence only made me feel more anxious. It wasn't like her to drop anything she considered essential, and the way she avoided it suddenly appeared deliberate. If she was testing the waters, she was not going in. If she was waiting for something, I was not about to give her the go-ahead. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to be one step ahead. Something was coming, but I didn't know when or how. All I could do was prepare. That night, I made certain that everything was solid. I glanced over the paperwork again, double-checking every aspect of my mother's asset transfers. The house, the savings, the investments, everything was now legally in her name, sealed in an uncontested trust. I even called her to confirm that she had all of the necessary papers. 2 weeks had passed, and everything appeared normal, frankly. She was acting more loving, even starting to talk about unrelated topics like jobs or what we should eat for the evening. It threw me off because she'd been aloof for months, avoiding anything more than superficial conversations. Part of me began to question whether I had been overreacting all along. Maybe the strange conduct was merely stress or something I didn't comprehend. But then, one random Friday night, she sat me down on the couch, turned off the television, and said, "We need to talk." My stomach fell quickly. I knew what she was going to say before she did. "I think we should get a divorce," she replied, her voice so calm it seemed prepared. It wasn't furious or emotional, it was simply frigid, as if she had told me we had run out of milk. I stared at her, unsure how to respond as she explained her argument. She mentioned needing space, wanting to figure herself out, and feeling like she'd lost her identity in the marriage, standard breakup phrases that didn't really explain anything. But then she said something that struck a different tone. "You know, I've made a lot of sacrifices for you over the years, and I don't think you really appreciate them. I deserve more." That last part stung. It wasn't just that she wanted out, it was that she framed it as if I owed her something, that everything was my fault, and she was simply claiming what was properly hers. As I sat there, trying to understand what she was saying, a new question arose. Why now? Then she said something that made everything start to make sense. "A friend of mine has been helping me see things more clearly," she continued, not looking at me. "A friend." I remained still, letting her speak, but my mind was racing. Who was this friend? Why were they so involved in my marriage? The way she stated it was not casual. It seemed like someone had been hyping her up, convincing her that leaving me wasn't simply a choice, but a strategy she needed to implement. And the more she talked about how she deserved more because of her sacrifices, the more I became skeptical. Sacrifices? What kind of sacrifice? She was happy with me, or so she said. I worked hard to offer her the life she desired, and it wasn't just about money. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it meant a lengthier commute for me. When she wanted to attend that pricey yoga retreat last year, I made sure we budgeted for it, even foregoing a vacation I was looking forward to so she could go. I backed her when she changed careers twice, telling her it was fine to take the risk because I wanted her happy. I believed being a decent husband meant putting her first whenever possible. And it wasn't as if I was an unresponsive, distant partner. I showed up. I remembered birthdays and random things she had mentioned loving. When she mentioned feeling caught in a rut, I suggested date nights. I listened to her complain about her job, friends, and family. I didn't always get it right, but I did try. That's why her "I deserve more" line hurt so much. I didn't even consider buying it. She was not upset due to anything I did or did not do. She was upset because something had changed in her. Perhaps it was the acquaintance she kept bringing up, or something else. But the lady sitting in front of me was not the woman I married, and I was not going to let her rewrite our marriage tale to fit her new narrative. I didn't press her at the moment. Instead, I nodded and said something innocuous, such as, "If that's how you feel, I guess we should figure out the next steps." She seemed startled that I wasn't arguing or begging her to stay, but I didn't mind. My attention had already changed. I needed to know who or what was causing her sudden, planned shift in conduct. She didn't just wake up one day and decide she wanted out. This was something greater, and I wasn't going to let it surprise me any more than it had already. After that chat, she went into her own apartment, and I received the divorce papers on Monday. Let me tell you, they didn't only want to stop the relationship. They were planning to take everything, half the house, my savings, my assets, and the car. She wanted it all. Plus, some ambiguous spousal support clauses that made little sense given her high salary. It seemed as if she was expecting me to give her all I had worked for. At first, I assumed she was just being vengeful, but the way she articulated her demands, so specific and aggressive, reassured me that she had someone guiding her through this. So I started digging. I couldn't just ask her who she'd been talking to, so I had to be clever. I began with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post frequently, I searched through her tagged photographs and comments looking for someone new. That's when I discovered the pattern. Jake repeatedly liked and commented on her posts. Nothing obscene, but enough to make me pause. I clicked on his profile, which was public. At first glance, he didn't appear to be much more than a 30-year-old marketing professional. But as I scrolled down, I spotted something unusual. He posted a photo at the same cafe I'd seen her at weeks before, on the same day I overheard her discussing starting afresh. My gut churned as I continued scrolling. More subtle signals were a comment on one of her pictures that read, "You've got this," as well as a selfie he'd taken from what appeared to be her new residence. None of it was substantial evidence, but it was enough to raise my suspicion. I wasn't sure what to do with this information, but I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for solutions to come my way. Her statement of a friend who helped her get through things remained with me, and I wanted to know who it was. I decided to contact one of our mutual acquaintances, Lisa. She and my wife had been friends for years, so she knew what was going on. I kept the conversation light at first, asking if she'd lately spoken with my wife or if anything seemed strange. Lisa reacted swiftly, saying she had no idea about the friend or any suggestions. I asked a few more probing questions, but she cut the conversation off defensively, claiming she couldn't help me. The entire situation felt rushed, as if she was trying to avoid becoming engaged. Not willing to give up, I called another buddy, Emily. I followed the same pattern, stating that I was simply trying to make sense of things. She was apprehensive at first, responding vaguely to my questions. When I pressed her more, she quickly ended the call, leaving me even more skeptical than before. I sat there, frustrated, trying to figure out my next move. Then, to my astonishment, Emily called back. She told me she needed to make sure what she said didn't come back to her. I assured it wouldn't, and after a long pause, she revealed what she knew. Apparently, my wife had been spending a lot of time with someone named Jake, whom she had met at work. Emily claimed she didn't know much else, but from what she'd heard, Jake was very active in the divorce advice my wife was receiving. Hearing that name felt like a puzzle piece fitting into place. It was evident that this was more than just her need for space or to find herself. Someone else was in the picture, directing her decisions, and I was eager to discover why. I chose to confront it in my own manner. That Saturday, I headed to her apartment building and parked a block away, trying to confirm what I already suspected. A few hours later, she and Jake stepped out of the building. They did not hold hands or anything, but the way they walked together, close, leaning in to talk, was plenty. They got into his car and drove away, leaving me sitting there, staring at the spot where they had been. I did not follow them. I did not need to. At that point, it was evident she hadn't simply stopped loving me. She'd been preparing to go with someone else, and now everything made sense. The unexpected distancing, the money questions, the forceful demands, and the divorce papers. She wasn't simply abandoning me, She was leaving me with nothing, and she was accompanied by someone at all times. I went home that night, my head racing with everything I'd learned. The betrayal burned, but what hurt the most was how premeditated everything was. She was using the divorce as a stepping stone to whatever life she was creating with Jake. But she had no idea what I had planned for her. The first mediation session felt strained from the time we stepped in. Her lawyer arrived with a binder so thick that it appeared they were bringing a case against a Fortune 500 firm. He began listing her demands as if they were entirely reasonable: half the house, the money, my assets, the car, and even some gibberish about spousal support. I remained silent, seeming to listen, but I was waiting for my attorney to make his move. When it was finally our turn, he handed a stack of paperwork across the table and said, "Before we proceed, I think it's important for everyone to review these." Her lawyer took the papers and skimmed through them. His confident posture changed fast as he flipped through the pages, his brow furrowing harder with each one. "What is this?" he inquired, gazing at my lawyer. "These documents show the transfer of all major assets into a trust under my client's mother's name," my lawyer said calmly. "The transfers were completed several weeks before the divorce filing, and the trust is fully legal and irrevocable." The room became utterly silent. Her lawyer looked at her, confused and frustrated. "You didn't mention this," he stated flatly. She snatched the papers from his hands and flipped through them, her face flushing. "This can't be real," she said, staring at the notarized signatures and dates. Then she turned to me, her countenance changing from incredulity to rage. "You planned this?" she muttered, gazing at me as if I'd committed a heinous crime. "You knew I was going to file, and you set this up to screw me over." I did not respond. I just sat there and let her connect the dots on her own. Her lawyer, apparently agitated, requested my counsel to elaborate. So he did, slowly, deliberately, and with every piece of evidence necessary to make the transfers irrefutable. The dates aligned exactly, indicating that I had transferred everything well before she filed. The signatures were duly notarized, and the confidence was solid. There was nothing they could do to challenge it. She was furious. "You're unbelievable," she said, leaning forward in her chair. "I can't believe you'd do something like this to me." I still did not say anything. What was there to say? This was not about me doing anything to her. This was to defend myself because she had made it apparent she was not going quietly. The conference finished with her lawyer saying something about needing to rethink their strategy, but everyone in the room knew they had no further moves to make. When we walked out of the building, she took me aside in the hallway, her expression a mix of rage and desperation. "This isn't over," she added, her tone low. "You're going to regret this." I just looked at her and said, "I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I have." Things escalated faster than I had anticipated following the mediation session. She went into complete meltdown mode almost instantly. It began with the calls, endless calls. At first, she appeared calm, even remorseful, leaving voicemails that began, "I think we just need to talk," or "I know this got messy, but we can fix it." When I did not answer, the tone changed. By the second day, her messages alternated between sobbing and screaming. One voicemail would be her lamenting about making a mistake and not wanting to lose what we had created together. Then she'd launch into a furious tirade accusing me of being stingy and cruel, blaming me for everything that was wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer told me not to engage, and I honestly did not want to. I was finished playing her games, but she was not. When the calls and texts did not work, she began telling stories. Mutual friends informed me that she had been telling people that the divorce was a hoax, and that it was all part of a larger farce. A prank? I mean, who would believe that? The flaws in her story quickly became apparent. Friends began to ask questions like, if it was a prank, why did you file actual legal paperwork? Or, why hire a lawyer and make such specific demands if it wasn't serious? When others didn't instantly accept the hoax justification, she doubled down. She said it was not a joke, but rather a test of our relationship's strength. She began casting herself as the victim, claiming that my reaction had hurt and betrayed her, that I had gone too far and broken our marriage's trust. At first, some individuals seemed to believe her stories. I'd get strange emails or comments from acquaintances like, "Wow, I didn't realize things were so rough for her." Even her brother lashed out, saying, "You should have just talked it out instead of being so drastic." It was annoying, but I knew the truth would eventually come out. And it did, due to a common buddy. Let us call him Matt. Matt and I were not particularly close, but we had always been nice. A few weeks after the mediation, he messaged me unexpectedly, stating he had something I needed to see. When we met, he brought out his phone and showed me a series of text messages between her and Jake. I was confused at first. How did you even get these? I inquired, scanning through the messages. Matt revealed that he and Jake shared a mutual buddy, who had heard their talks. Apparently, this common acquaintance had grown concerned about the way things were going, especially when Jake began gloating about how he was assisting her in securing her future. It didn't take long for that common buddy to figure out what securing her future really meant, trying to bleed me dry. Feeling awful about remaining silent, the buddy grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Matt, believing he had a better relationship with me and could warn me. "This guy's been playing both sides," Matt replied, shaking his head. "He's been hyping her up to take you for everything while making her believe he'd be there for her afterward." Matt gave me the texts and said, "I thought you should know. You don't deserve this, man." The texts were terrible. She wasn't just ranting to Jake about the divorce. She was actively planning her future steps with him, and he was guiding her through them. A message she left read, "Once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms." Jake responded, "Don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money." I sat there, staring at Matt's phone and trying to understand what I was reading. This was neither a misunderstanding or an emotional response to a failed marriage. This was a cold, deliberate manipulation. I thanked Matt and he left, but my thoughts were racing. Everything made sense now: her abrupt isolation, her fixation with our finances, and her harsh demands throughout the divorce. It was all part of a plan, one she had been developing with Jake behind the scenes. The text soon circulated among our mutual friends. Matt shared them with a few friends, and they quickly spread. Her story suddenly ceased to be credible. People who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of her began to distance themselves, and the change was nearly immediate. People who had previously defended her or remained neutral suddenly recognized her for who she truly was. Even her closest allies started to distance themselves. By the time the divorce was finalized, she had only her personal things. Her lawyer quietly dismissed her complaint after recognizing there was no legal basis to stand on. All of those bold requests had crumbled under the weight of the documents I had produced, and the trust I had established with my mother was unbreakable. Jake seemed to vanish as soon as things began to unravel. I wouldn't be surprised if he used her as much as she did me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her fantasies of independence and a new beginning, but the moment it became evident she wasn't going away with anything, he was gone. Without Jake in her corner, her confidence plummeted. The calls and texts continued, but they became increasingly desperate. She was not accusing me anymore. She begged. "Can we just talk, please? I'll do anything to fix this." One voicemail stated. A different opinion. "You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this and move on? I'll drop everything if you just talk to me." I did not respond. I could not. It was too late to reverse the harm. Even her family began to drift away. Her brother contacted me at one time, apologizing for some of the things he had said before when he believed her side of the story. "I didn't know what she was doing to you," he said. "I'm sorry I ever took her word for it. As for me, I received the house, my savings, and something I hadn't experienced in a long time: peace of mind. My mother, as usual, was my rock. She arrived with buckets of paint and a list of suggestions to help me reclaim the area as mine. Now, life feels like it's mine again. No more second-guessing every small interaction. No longer feeling betrayed. Just peace. She is a chapter from my history that I no longer read. And the remainder of the story is entirely up to me to write." After my parents refused to help babysit and compared my children to my sister's kids, I stopped helping them with free house repairs. The following day, my phone burst. Thanksgiving was intended to be a time for family, excellent food, and a reprieve from reality, but it turned out to be a disaster. We were all gathered at my parents' new property, which I had spent the previous 2 months renovating for them. They had asked me to do it, so I accepted. New floors, plumbing repairs, repainting, and electrical work. I spent every free hour there, covered in dust and sweat, ensuring that everything was flawless. Meanwhile, they sat peacefully in their flat, waiting for the house to be completed. I did not complain. They were my parents, and helping them was the right thing to do. In exchange, I had requested only one thing: occasional babysitting. Not every day, not every weekend, only when I needed it. My wife died a few years ago, and I was doing my best to raise my children alone. But sometimes I needed assistance. I believed it made sense, and they had always agreed, until that night. We were in the middle of supper when my father laid down his fork and said, "We're not going to babysit your kids anymore." I assumed he was kidding, but his expression was serious. The table became quiet. Then he went on to imply that they were exhausted, that my children were too much, and, worst of all, compared them to my sister's children. He mentioned how well-behaved, quiet, and easy they were, unlike mine. I looked over to my sister. She didn't say anything, just sat there smiling. Something inside of me twisted. I'd spent 2 months fixing up her house for free. They had never had to lift a finger, and now they were telling me that my children, were a burden to them, that they weren't as good as my sisters. I took a big breath and tried to hold it together. Then I said, "Really? I'll stop fixing your house." There was silence. My father just looked at me like I had hit him. My mother stepped in and tried to smooth things over. She started talking about how I didn't realize how difficult it was for them, and how much they had done for me. She made it appear as if I was pushing them to do unpaid work, while in reality, I had barely asked for anything. Before I could react, several of our other relatives spoke up. They did not like it. One of my aunts remarked it was foolish to talk about my children in that manner, especially in front of them. Another uncle pointed out how much I had already done for my parents, thereby saving them thousands of dollars on repairs. My sister remained mute, soaking all the accolades for her wonderful children. I stood up. "Thank you for a great Thanksgiving dinner," I told you. "I'm extremely grateful for everything." I then turned to my children and informed them that we were going. We collected our coats and hurried to the car, leaving a table filled with startled expressions. That night, my children questioned me why their grandparents had said those things, and why they were constantly comparing them to their cousins. I moaned and stroked my cheek. The world isn't always fair, and sometimes grandparents aren't the nicest people. They gazed at me, expecting for more, so I made sure to express what was most important. "But I love you both more than anything." I went to bed, weary. I had no regrets, but it hurt nonetheless. The next morning, I had 52 missed calls from my parents. When I saw 52 missed calls, I assumed something horrible had happened. My stomach dropped. I instantly called my mother back, half expecting to hear about an emergency. Instead, as soon as she answered the phone, she began ranting as if I had personally set fire to her home. "John, you need to come over right now," she urged. I frowned. "Why? What happened?" She skirted the question and insisted that I come over. My father also got on the phone, his tone tense but controlled. "Just come, John. We need to talk." I was not foolish. I knew exactly what this was about, but I knew I had to leave nonetheless. My children still had some belongings in their house, and I did not want to leave them behind. So I informed them that I'd be there in an hour. When I got inside their flat, I knew things hadn't calmed down overnight. My mother was pacing. My father was standing in the kitchen with his arms crossed, and my sister, who had seemingly decided to become even more involved, was seated on the couch, as if she were moderating a presidential discussion. It began immediately as I closed the door behind me. My mother leaped in first. "John, don't you think you overreacted?" I stared at her. "Overreacted?" My father jumped in. "Look, we're sorry if we hurt your feelings, but you can't just refuse to finish the house because of this." I nearly laughed. There it was. That was what this was all about, not the family or the children, but the house. I shake my head. "So, let me get this straight. You call my kids a burden, say they're too much for you, compare them to my sister's kids in front of everyone, and now when I say I won't do the work you asked me to do for free, I'm the problem." My mother placed her palm on her chest, as if I had just badly offended her. "That's not fair, John. We have done a lot for you. We took care of your kids for years." My sister has finally spoken up. "Mom, Dad, you really shouldn't compare the kids like that." For the first time, my parents seemed astonished. My mother blinked at her. "You don't think we were right?" My sister shrugged. "It's not about being right. You just shouldn't have said it in front of the kids. It's not okay." I must admit, I didn't expect her to say that. She wasn't exactly defending me, but she wasn't supporting them either. Instead of backing down, my father turned back to me. "John, we just want this to be over. You're not going to cut us off over something so small." I looked him dead in the eyes. "Watch me." My mother gasped, as if I had threatened to place her in a nursing home. My father began to say something else, but I was done. I went to the closet, got my children's clothes, and proceeded out the door. And that was when my mother said it. "John, you're being selfish." I paused. Selfish? After 2 months of free labor? After bending over backwards to help them? After never complaining about all the times they needed something from me? I turned around. Selfish? You want me to work on your house, but you won't even look after your own grandchildren. You want my time, my effort, my energy, but the second I need something, it's suddenly too much for you. My mother opened her mouth to respond, but I was finished. You don't have to babysit anymore, but I don't have to fix your house either. Then I walked out. That was only the beginning. Things worsened during the next few weeks. First, they attempted to force me to return. Then they attempted to guilt me. Then they begged, because they had a serious situation. Hiring professionals would cost a fortune, and the longer I ignored them, the more desperate they became. But, just when I thought they couldn't get any more manipulative, something happened that changed everything. For the first few days following the incident, I ignored their calls. I ignored their text messages as well, then began the guilt trip. First, my mother gave the typical, "We're getting old, John, we won't be around forever" spiel. Then my father wrote me a long note about family loyalty and how I was being unreasonable over a minor misunderstanding. Meanwhile, my sister remained relatively silent. I assumed she was trying to stay out of it, but at least she spoke up briefly during the debate. Then, about a week after Thanksgiving, I received a message from my father that made me laugh. "John, we forgive you? Can you come finish the house this weekend?" Forgive me? I did not even respond. That's when they changed their strategy. At first, they tried to bribe me. My mother called to say they'd start babysitting again if I finished the house. I told her no. My father then texted me that they'd be willing to help with the kids if I came over to talk things out. I told him no. Then they sent my sister to try. She called one night and began with light conversation, inquiring about my children. Then she spoke casually. "You know, maybe you should just finish the house. They're being stubborn, but it's probably easier if you just get it done." I laughed. "So I do free labor and in return, they insult my kids, and you think I'm the one who should back down?" She paused. "I mean, it's their house, John. They're just stuck in their ways. You know how they are." "I do. That's why I'm not doing it." She exhaled. "Look, I get it, okay? But they're never going to admit they were wrong. They're our parents." That struck me. She knew they were mistaken. She wasn't even attempting to dispute it, but she knew they'd never say it aloud. I told her I had to leave and hung up. That night, I considered everything. About how for years, I had done things for them without expecting anything in return. About how they had never showed me genuine appreciation. They acted as if it was my responsibility to help them but an inconvenience to help me. And I determined I was finished, completely. That was the night I blocked their numbers. 2 days later, my sister arrived at my place unexpectedly. I opened the door and noticed her standing there, looking embarrassed. "We need to talk," she said. I allowed her inside. She sat down at my kitchen table and stared at me for a moment. Then she sighed. "They called the contractor," she explained. It astonished me. "Good, so they finally got someone to do it?" She grimaced. "Yeah, but there's a problem." I waited. "They got scammed." I blinked. She nodded. "Dad hired some guy off Facebook because he was cheaper than a real company. Paid him up front and now he's gone. Took the money and disappeared." I couldn't help it. I laughed. My sister shot me a glance. "John, they lost $10,000. I stopped laughing. 10 grand? Wait, where did they even get that much money? "They borrowed some of it," she told me. "From family." That part took me off guard. "Who?" I asked. She hesitated before saying, "Uncle Mark, Aunt Linda, even Grandma." I sat back. They borrowed from other individuals to avoid acknowledging they needed me, and now they were $10,000 in debt with a half-finished house. I shake my head. "That's not my problem." My sister nodded slowly. "I know, and I told them that." That made me pause. "You what?" She exhaled. "I told them they should have just apologized to you. That they did this to themselves." For the first time in this disaster, I felt a shift. My sister, their favorite and golden kid, had actually spoken up for me. She leaned forwards. "John, they're desperate. They want you to come back. They're still being stubborn, but they know they messed up." I crossed my arms. She shrugged. "And I think you should make them beg." Hearing my sister say that threw me off. She had always been their favorite, the one they admired and supported. And now she told me to make them beg? I raised an eyebrow. "You really think they'll do that?" She flashed me a half smile. "They don't have a choice?" For the first time in my life, I felt in control. I slumped back in my chair. "So what exactly do they want from me?" She exhaled. "They want you to come over and talk." I laughed. "Yeah, I've heard that before." She nodded. I know, but this time they're not in control. You are. And she was correct. I did not go that day. I did not go the following day either. I let them sit in their messes. Allow them to sweat. A few days later, my mother broke. She wrote a rambling text that was part apology and part excuse. She admitted that they may have been unjust and should not have said what they did. But what is the funniest part? We should have handled things differently, but you also overreacted. I genuinely laughed when reading it. Even when they were desperate, they had to assign some blame. I ignored the message. Then my father tried. His response was simpler. John, we need you. Come back and finish the house. We'll figure everything else out later. No apologies, just say, we need you. I also overlooked that. The next night, my sister called. Okay, she said. I think they're actually breaking this time. What happened? They told me to tell you they're sorry. I blinked. Wait, they actually said that? She paused. Well, they told me to tell you, not in those exact words, but... I exhaled. Close enough. She then said something that astonished me. They asked if I thought you'd ever speak to them again. That made me pause. For the first time, I realized they were truly terrified. They were concerned not only about the house, but also that they had pushed me too far. Honestly, they had. I agreed to meet with them, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to hear from them. I told my sister I'd come over on my own terms. When I walked into their apartment, they seemed less confident and more apprehensive. My mother had been crying. My father looked fatigued. I sat, crossed my arms, and waited. Finally, my father sighed. We messed up, John. That was as close to an apology as I was going to receive. He went on to say how they didn't plan to hurt me, but were frustrated, exhausted, and stressed. That the home had gotten overbearing, and that they had spoken inappropriately. Then my mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet. We love you and the kids. And, for the first time, I believed her. I waited for them to be silent for a bit before saying, I'm not finishing your house. My mother gasped, like if I'd slapped her. My father tensed. John, he answered. I cut him off. You had 2 months of free labor from me. You had help whenever you needed it, and the one thing I asked for in return was too much for you. Now I'm done. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not fixing your house. Silence. My mother seemed to want to quarrel, but she didn't. My father stared at the table. My sister was just watching. Then I stood up. But I'm willing to move forward if you stop treating me like I owe you something, if you stop treating my kids like they're less than my sisters, and if you understand that from now on, if I help you, it's because I want to, not because you expect it. They nodded because they had no other option. I left that day feeling I'd won. And for the first time in a long while, I felt liberated. Things did not suddenly improve following the meeting. My parents were not suddenly better people, and I wasn't foolish enough to believe they wouldn't try to push the boundaries again. But something had changed. They realized I wasn't going to be their handyman, backup plan, or safety net. They were afraid because they knew I was about to walk away. For a few weeks, there were no needless phone calls or guilt trips, only silence. It was nearly calm. Then, one afternoon, I received a text from my mother. Can we take the kids this weekend? We miss them. I stared at the text for a moment. This was the same woman who had referred to them as a burden and had made comparisons to my sister's children in their presence. Has she suddenly missed them? I tried to dismiss it, but I remembered my children. So I asked her, do you want to go? They paused. My youngest, Ben, appeared hesitant. My oldest, Emily, crossed her arms. Are they going to be weird again? I was honest. Maybe. They thought about it. Then Emily shrugged. I guess we can go. So I quickly said, sure, I'll drop her off at 5. My parents were not the same that weekend when I dropped her off. My mother seemed extremely kind, as if she was trying too hard to show she wasn't the bad guy. My father was silent. I stayed for a few minutes, just enough to ensure my children's comfort. Then, before I left, my father pulled me aside. We really love them, John, he remarked. We just messed up. It wasn't a full apology, but for my father, it was as close as I could get. I just nodded. Good. Then don't mess up again. Later that night, I received a call from my sister. I have to tell you something, she said. Her voice conveyed seriousness. What is it? She exhaled. Mom told me something the other day about why she stopped babysitting. I sat upright. Because they were tired, right? She paused. No, that wasn't it. At least not the whole reason. I frowned. What was it? She took a deep breath. You were jealous, John. I blinked. Jealous of what? She paused. Of you. Of how much the family stood by you at Thanksgiving. Of how close you are with your children. About how you became the center of attention when they're used to it being me. That really threw me. That doesn't even make sense. It does to them, she explained. You felt like you lost control, like people were looking at you as the good son, the responsible one, and that pissed them off. I sat there, trying to digest everything. My parents were more than just tired of babysitting, they were bitter. I'm bitter because I was a nice father. It was wild. It was sad. And that just reinforced one thing for me, they would never really change. I did not inform my parents what my sister said. It wouldn't have altered anything, but I did modify how I handled them from that point forward. Everything was on my terms. When they wanted to see the children, only if my kids wanted to. If they needed my assistance with something, they had to ask, not assume. If they ever disrespected my children again, that was it, no more chances. And the best part? They knew. For the first time in my life, I was not simply their son. I was someone they needed to respect. And that was worth everything. For a while, everything remained polite. My folks were on their best behavior. They didn't push, guilt me, or ask me for help around the house anymore. It was almost as if they had finally understood. Until they hadn't. My aunt contacted me one Sunday afternoon and asked, John, did you see what your mom posted on Facebook? It was never a pleasant sentence to hear. When I opened the app, there was a lengthy, dramatic post from my mother about how family members should always help one another and how some people forget where they came from. After everything we've done, it's heartbreaking to see our own son turn his back on us. She did not mention my name, but everyone understood who she was talking about. And the best part? She concluded, at least we still have our amazing daughter, who never left us. That was it. That was it. I was done. I didn't text or phone her. I wrote a simple response to the post. You're right, Mom. Family should help each other. That's why I spent 2 months fixing your house for free while you sat in your apartment. That's why I asked for nothing in return except that you treat my kids with basic respect. And when you called them a burden and compared them to my sister's children, I realized that you don't want a family. You want servants. And I'm not playing that role anymore. I pressed submit and saw the torrents open. The first comment came from my uncle. Wow, I didn't know the whole story. This is messed up. Then my aunt. John is right. You took advantage of him. He gave you everything and you repaid him by insulting his children. Unbelievable. Then my grandmother, the one from whom they borrowed money. You told me you needed the money because John refused to help you, but you never told me why. Now I see the truth. Comment after comment sided with me, and the best one came from my sister. I love Mom and Dad, but John is telling the truth. They treated him unfairly, and he has every right to leave. My golden sister, the one they always favored and supported, didn't defend them. I sat back and watched my parents' reputations crumble in real time. About an hour later, the post was deleted. My mother tried to call, but I didn't answer. She then texted, "Was that necessary?" I responded, "Was your mail necessary?" There was nothing. A few days later, my father caved in. He simply wrote, "We were wrong. We're sorry." No excuses. No blame. And, frankly, I didn't need anything else. I never worked on their home again. They had to hire someone at full price. I would never let them shame me into anything again. If they wanted to see my kids, it was because they wanted to, not because they forced it. And what's the biggest change? They never compared my children to my sister's children again because they knew if they did, it would be their final time seeing her. I had placed them in their place, and for the first time, they realized it. I'd won.